Welcome, everyone, to Davos Fingers, episode 151, Blue Flame. I'm Scaddy, and with me, as always, is my buddy Matt.
Hello, everybody. So good to be in your ears on this fine evening. This episode, we're covering chapter 73, Eggs. You have to say it like that. Eggs uh,
Eggs.
through poison, chapter 78. So this episode's kind of an interesting one. You've got Kvothe and Denna, our fearsome twosome, having a hearty meal with the local, finding a sort of living dragon, stumbling upon a secret drug cartel, and one of them gets totally high. It's on accident, but they do get high. I mean, there's wholesome-ish kids who are getting high on accident and also planning to poison a dragon. So
That's right.
good kids.
That's right.
Good kids.
Good kids. I mean,
Good kids.
you know, we'll get through it, but stopping a potentially rampaging beast.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to a couple announcements. For those paying attention to the Gregorian calendar, it's February by the time this episode releases, and it's getting close to a Song of Madness time, and it is happening. And Matt
It's
and I are very
happening.
excited about it. We have some fun ideas. No, we're not giving them to you
We're not
yet.
going to tell you a single
No, I'm
thing.
not bluffing and pretending we have ideas and we don't. We spent an hour talking about it before actually recording tonight,
You guys are going to be
and
furious. It's going to be awesome.
they're fun ideas for
Yep.
us. They're
Yep.
fun for us.
Yeah. You guys are going to be furious. I
We
can't
don't
wait.
care whether you like them. But there will, though, be a special Patreon event around the Song of Madness. We would like to do something special for our patrons around the kickoff of the Song of Madness, and that will happen as well. Something we're really excited about on that front too. So pay attention there, patrons.
That's
And
right.
last announcement, we're moving Matt to a different schedule.
Yeah. We're
We're
going
going to start
to,
recording a little bit more frequently again.
well, I was thinking like Christmas and Easter.
Christmas and Easter.
Yeah.
That sounds way less frequent. But it would be the first time we recorded near Christmas.
It would be.
So
We're
that would be a
we're coming
change.
off a fairly lengthy Christmas break.
We are indeed.
Holiday
And
break.
Christmas, it was a holiday break, one I
Hmm.
enjoyed immensely. It
Me
took
too.
me it took me a while to get the motivation to get back into this. I took
Yep.
a nice long break.
Yep. Here we
Um,
are, January 25th. Feels good, baby.
but even in that break, Matt, I spent a good portion of my time reading the sequel to this book, A Wise Man's Fear.
You
So
did.
I wasn't totally taking the time off and being lazy about
You did. I took the time off completely.
it. I mean, it's not work reading these books. It's so much fun for me.
Yeah, one thing we were
Uh,
doing, I suppose we could put this out there, is many of you may already know, but Scat and I just completed a huge reread project with our friend Aaron over at the Star Wars Legends Lounge podcast. I
we
think we've
did.
talked about it on here at least a couple
We have.
times.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we read all 19 books, 19 books of the new Jedi Order series. That's a Star Wars Legends series that takes place about 30-ish years after the events of Star Wars A New Hope.
25 or
25.
30, I think, is what it
Yeah,
says. Yeah.
right. And us, along with some of our friends, K2, Justin, Kat, we took turns reading the books with Aaron and discussing them on his podcast. So check that out at Star Wars Legends Lounge. And then we recently just did a wrap-up episode where we got to kind of do a round table with Aaron and all our fellow guest hosts. It was a lot of fun. So,
It was a lot of fun. Yeah, I feel like we could have talked to that group for hours on end, um,
100%.
about lots of things, kind of like our podcast.
Hmm.
And yeah, Aaron is such a great host and such a nice guy, and
Great
gave us all
wrangler of
gifts.
humans.
Gave us all gifts in thanks
Gifts.
for participating, which was super nice.
Hmm.
Um, anyway, go if you're interested in Star Wars at all and want to try out some old new stories that you may not have read before, check out the new Jedi Order series, and you can listen to our voices as well as some others covering that. It was a lot of fun. We're gonna get into it. We're spoiler free
Why
for the
not?
Kingkiller Chronicle as we cover it here. We will bring spoilers in at the end of the podcast for a special segment we call Devi After Dark. That means we won't spoil future content that does not occur in these chapters during the regular sections of this podcast, not until that end section where we spoil things. So listen with ease.
Yep. We love to hear from you guys. We really do. So find us. We are davosfingers at gmail.com. We're also on Twitter at davosfingers. We're also on Blue Sky, same handle. You can find us on Facebook too. And go check out our Patreon program. Like we said, we're going to be doing some fun stuff around A Song of Madness. And you can find that at patreon.com/davosfingers.
Indeed, you can. And I just have one more thing to say before we dive into the content, Matt. And that
Mm,
is go Lions.
go Lions.
By the time this episode releases, we will know whether or not they are playing in the Super Bowl.
Right.
And I will be either frowning as you listen to this episode or smiling and beaming as you listen to this episode, depending on which happened. And
I
I am
hope
in
you're
my
just happy no
Lions
matter what, bro. They've done
attire.
so good. Yeah, you look
It's
great in your
true.
Lions gear.
It's been a nice season, regardless of whether they get there.
Oh, the people crying and stuff. I mean,
It's been a journey. Oh,
between the
indeed.
Lions and Jason Kelsey, like football's just in a good place right now.
Did, did I see he dove out of the balcony, or was that a photoshopped image? I did not see this
Oh,
live.
he climbed out of the
He climbed out.
suite
Okay,
and like mingled with the crowd with his
cool.
shirt off and everything. Um,
What a quality human.
he's a great dude. Did you see the thing where he picked up the little girl who had the Taylor Swift sign and showed
No,
it to? So he
no.
was out amongst the crowd, shirt off, beers in both hands or whatever, and he sees a little girl. She was like 8 years old in the section below him, and she's
Uh-huh.
holding up a Taylor Swift sign because Taylor was at the game,
Uh-huh.
obviously.
Yeah.
And so he called her up and he said, he was like, "Can I pick you up and go? Let's go show Taylor your sign." And he
Uh-huh.
picked her up in his arms, no shirt, walks her
Nice.
walks her up back up to the suite, and he's like, "Show her the picture." And he's like, "Wave at Taylor," and Taylor waved at her and everything. And then they turned around and took a picture together, and then he sent her back to her mom. But yeah, just like what a
It's
guy.
it's gonna be diabolical when she breaks up with Travis Kelsey the night before the Super Bowl
And
as
writes a
like
song about it blaming him.
some sort of 49er agent that's been placed deep within the Chiefs network or something.
She's really dating. She'd been dating Brock Purdy the whole time.
Yes. Psych. Do the kids say psych anymore?
Bro,
Maybe
that's
not.
cap. Uh,
Bussin', no cap.
yep. Well, here we are.
Here we are.
Looking at
It's
Davos
the whole
fingers.
it's the whole thing.
All
Matt, do you
right.
want to start with pegs?
Let's start with
Pegs.
pegs. Okay, diving into Name of the Wind. Done with all this football talk. Let's talk about some high fantasy, high-ish fantasy. You might remember, Scad, that where we left off with our heroes was in the forested hills and bluffs outside of Trebon, where Kvothe and Denna had gone to look for more clues of the Chandrian, as well as look for Denna's mysterious patron Ash, after coming away with more questions than answers at the Mauthen farm. It wasn't long before these two came upon a kindly local swineherder named, here we go, Skoivan Shiemelpfeneg.
You're welcome.
Thank you. They call him Shem, who they charmed for information about what in the world is going on around these parts. Shem was liberal enough in sharing what he knew, especially after getting a few drops of brand in him. They discover from Shem that when Farmer Mauthen first started building his farm on Bororil, which Kvothe finds out is actually just the locals' way of saying Barrow Hill, he
Arrow
came
Hill.
upon large buried stones and bones. Lots of bones. Such an ominous find might scare away most builders, but Mauthen, undeterred, used the stones for his farm's foundation. Shem finds this to be the greatest offense to the karma gods. And what's more, rumor is Mauthen found something in a sealed stone room underground, according to Shem. Something of extreme value that he was waiting to reveal at the wedding as a gift to his daughter. Some sort of, I don't know, priceless heirloom, perhaps? Shem also admits that he doesn't spend much time in these woods due to strange happenings going on within, especially to the north. And here Shem gets a little more guarded, but he does reveal that 2 nights ago he saw a huge blue flame shoot into the sky 3 times in the middle of the night in that direction. So their attention sufficiently piqued, Kvothe and Denna identify a hill a mile or two distance that if they can get to by that night, they should have a clear view of the northern bluffs where Shem said he saw the blue fire. That ends the chapter.
Yeah, yeah, an interesting one. Get a little bumpkin wisdom, a little local knowledge. Nothing like being able to find somebody who lives in the area, really fill you in on what's going on.
Yeah, conveniently placed.
Conveniently placed, yes. If it weren't for that security guard, he
Exactly.
knew. Seemed extraneous at the time. Not the first time
Well,
we've made that Wayne's World reference.
no, won't be the last.
Probably not. Uh, the
I mean,
one thing Kvothe doesn't know how to do, Matt. Do you remember from this chapter?
what is it, Scad?
Kvothe just knows how to do everything in this book, right? Like,
It's
oh yeah, I
true.
know how to do that. I picked that up because my troop likes horses. No, I know how to do that. Of course, I spent years on the stage. I can fool anyone with he knows how to do everything. I can bow, I can handshake, I can do everything. He does not know how to hold a knife.
That's true. Denna has to
De-
teach him.
Denna has to teach him how to hold a knife. And it seems like a weird thing for him not to know. That's all I'm saying. He had the guy in the troop that was like a swordsman guy, even
That's true.
had like a little sword he trained with and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. Feels like the things Kvothe wouldn't know that wouldn't be on the list.
I hear you. It's specifically though how to hold the knife when you're fighting somebody though, right? Like for real
Yes.
skis.
Yeah.
Is what Denna's telling him.
Yeah.
So maybe not. I mean, he wasn't
Yeah.
really trained in other types of swordplay and stuff, was he?
No, I'm sure he wasn't trained as a professional knife fighter. I guess to
You're
me,
right though that he does have a lot of just like seemingly just like, oh, he
yes,
pulled that knowledge
worldly
out of his
knowledge.
butt,
Yes. Yeah.
but he doesn't know that you hold the knife with your finger kind of along the blade, according to Denna.
He's been carrying this knife for a long time. He's
Hmm.
like had it for a while. We're supposed to believe he's never like figured out how to cut with it without hurting him. It's a anyway. It's a quibble. It's just with all the stuff he tells us he knows. I would think he'd know how to use the thing that he carries around for defense. And well, I
Right.
guess he doesn't carry it for defense, but he uses it all the time to cut apples. And you'd think he knows the leverage points and how it. Anyway, I'll
How
drop
to
it.
stab someone in the neck without cutting your own thumb up? You
Yeah,
know, doesn't
he'll.
quite know that one yet.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, I'm glad he hasn't had to stab someone in the neck. That's good.
So
But
obviously,
oh, go ahead.
the highlight of the chapter is the way that Rothfuss writes the way that Shem talks, right?
Yeah,
I believe we call that, I mean, you could say he's spelling it what, phonetically or onomatopoeia. What is that?
onomatopoeia.
Yeah, where you spell
Sure,
it like it sounds.
it's spelled like it sounds. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of fine looking herd, they say
Fine.
fine looking herd,
Yeah.
or nay a herd, shepping cows make a herd, pegs
Yeah.
make a sounder. Is that so?
Yeah.
But instead of saying, is that so? He said, is that so? and he spells it E-S, as, at, instead of that, Soo,
Yep.
S-O-O.
Mhm.
And there are whole conversations for pages in that language. How did it work with your brain, Scad? Was it
Well,
tiring? Was it fun?
what I like is that um, much like happens when you're talking to someone with an accent that you're not super familiar with, you do get an ear for it, and it becomes more familiar to you. And Patrick geniusly reduces the amount of accent in the words, and it becomes more normal looking. The words become regular as Kvothe and Denna become accustomed to hearing it. And then it
Mm-hmm.
becomes just almost like regular written English. There's still
Mm-hmm.
a few, but instead of every word being weird, it's like every eighth word is weird, right? And I love that it's an interesting device that Pat uses, going from that automatopoeia to just language we recognize because theoretically the people listening have gotten used to it. Um, it works fine for me. I can't, I wish I could remember who it is because it's clear as a bell in my head. I can hear the actor saying it, but there's a specific actor with an accent that I use when I'm reading this to fill my
Oh
head with
yeah?
it. And I for the life of me, I can't remember what it's from, but I can hear it in my head. Um, if I think of it, I'll remind you. I can almost
Please
even
do.
see him. It's very weird. But I love it. It is one of my favorite parts of this chapter is how
It
it
is very
manipulates the
easy to
language that
imagine
way.
it. Yeah, that
Yeah.
accent. You can just hear it. And it's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's very cool.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, and the runner up to the best part of this chapter is the description of this crackling pig that sounds
Oh, so
delicious.
hungry. Yeah,
I
so
my
hungry.
mouth waters every time I read this scene. Um, roast pig. I've only had roast pig, I think, like in the manner that they're talking about one time. It was good,
It
but it was
good,
also kind
man.
of, yeah. Like, did you do it like in a luau or something?
We did a hardcore when my brother's wife
Yeah,
is from
she's
Tonga.
Tonka. Yeah.
Hmm. And so the wedding reception, that side of the family
I think you
went
told me that. Yeah,
all
yeah,
out, and we had two roasted pigs, just
yeah,
like full on laid out on the table, just like you imagine apple in the mouth
yeah.
roasted pigs. Brother, brother, could
When
have
I was in
died.
co when I was in college, they had a Hawaii club.
Oh,
Um, and one of the people on my dorm floor is a freshman. His name was Lucas. He was from Hawaii and was part of the Hawaiian club, and he invited like several people from our dorm floor to go. And they roast a pig in the ground, which I had never heard of at that time.
mm-hmm.
But it was pretty good, but I didn't get nearly enough. But it was good.
Ukuwaka
Uh,
hiki, come on, you wanna lay me? Also Wayne's
and
World.
Wayne's World comes back again. Uh, third time pays for all, as Quoth says. Uh, I prefer lamb. Lamb is kind of like
Yeah?
I have a rule. I have a rule. If I go to a restaurant, I have a rule to like if they've got a nice lamb, I'm supposed to order it. I break the rules sometimes. Like if I'm in a nice restaurant, they've got a good lamb on the menu.
You'll get
I
it.
like to order it. Yeah,
What do you
I'm
like
not
about
usually.
lamb?
I don't know
You just
the
like it?
texture. The texture. Uh, I mean, all depends on how it's prepared, of course, but
Sure.
it's always been just very flavorful and juicy and moist and
Mm.
not. It's not tough. Yeah,
Maybe I just haven't
in
had a
my
good one yet.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just haven't
Do you
had
have
a
anything
good one
like
yet.
that where you're like, if you see it on the menu, you're like, I'm getting that.
Mm,
Options open, play in the field.
Great Western Bacon from Carl's Jr. I don't know.
I like to eat around.
My favorite steak is picanha. So,
Your favorite your favorite steak is picanha?
mhm.
Is that what we said? Is that the
I
Brazilian
guess it's a cut. Yeah.
Brazilian preparation?
Mm,
Okay, cool.
man.
Uh we get the bumpkin wisdom. Nothing plugs a man's ears like money, he says.
Yeah,
It's true.
it's very true.
and this Mauthen guy. What do you think of this Mauthen guy? I mean, I'm not a religious person, but I think even if I found like bones and like relics in a sealed off room, I'd be like, okay, well, let's put that back just out of
This
respect. Like,
belongs in a museum.
yeah, right. Yeah, I suppose the pot maybe I wouldn't, but the bones I would want to leave undisturbed.
Correct. Yeah.
How do you
A,
feel about this Mothman guy and
a
his?
part of me kind of admires him. Like that he's just like, don't care.
Yeah, it's mine now. It's
Yeah.
mine.
I bought
It's
it.
mine. It's mine.
Yeah.
Ireland? Ah, it's fine. Braveheart.
Braveheart. Braveheart. Nice. That might be one of our first ever Braveheart polls on this
It might
podcast.
be. Man, I used to watch that movie a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, part of me admires him. Like, I don't care. Bought this
Yeah.
hill. Like, I'm gonna put my farm on it. Like, I got a farm to build. Like, it's not a national park, is it? Like,
Yeah, it's
then I don't
that's
care. Like,
fair. What do you think of the explanation of it being a barrow hill?
that's a good question. I don't care. Like,
Total apathy is what I think, Scott.
yeah. Like, what about you? I found that to be a very odd little sequitur in the chapter, right? Was that
Yeah.
in this chapter or is it in the next chapter where they start talking about it more? Where they
No, it's
talk
in
about
this
it being a
one.
fort and stuff.
No, it's in this one. Because this is the chapter where they look from the top of this barrow hill out
Over to the
and
other
see
one.
the other hill that they want to
Okay,
go
okay, yeah,
take a
yeah.
look at because it's bigger than where they are. Um, but
Yeah.
I didn't love Quoth's explanation, I guess, is where I was leading you to.
Uh,
He explains that people that don't dig barrows and don't know what they're like would call it Barrow Hill, even though it's not really barrows, right? He says they're not really barrows. They just assumed they're barrows because they don't know what a barrow is.
and what's a barrow, Scad?
Well, it's like a
For the
place
kids at home.
where you bury people.
It's like a tomb kind
A
of.
tomb, yeah, an underground
Yeah.
tomb
Hmm.
that would create this sense of like hills, right? Little hills. You kind of exaggerated versions of them. You can see them in Lord of the Rings movie.
Theoden.
Theoden, right, talks about the flowers and no one should outlive their son. The whole speech there.
Hmm.
Um, but uh, but the logic to me goes like, well, if they don't dig barrows, why would they use that word? If it's not something they're from, like if I don't make burritos, am I likely to use the phrase "wrap it up tight like a burrito"?
Maybe. Yeah.
If I don't know how to make them or use them, or I don't eat them, is that a phrase I'd likely use? Like, why wouldn't they pick a different name? I don't know. I didn't like that explanation.
Just that whole
So
part was just odd to me. It's like I
it
think
was
it's
odd.
we're
Yeah,
going to talk about this whole thing, make it seem like a big deal because it's going on for a page, 2 pages or whatever. And
yeah,
then, yeah, it's just a fort. All right, well, let's go over there now. And
yeah,
we're going to hike
yeah,
to that hill. And
yeah.
that's it.
It does, and maybe a little for Debbie After Dark from the next chapter we're about to get to, but it does, that it used to be a fort. It does raise some questions about this area
Sure.
and the Waystones,
Yep.
why they're there, things like that. Um, it implies that this, and I think Quoth says as much in the chapter, it implies that this used to be a much more trafficked area,
This was a
perhaps.
hopping area.
Maybe, right?
Hmm.
We'll talk a little bit more about that in Debbie After Dark in the next chapter, maybe.
How about all the that's what she said jokes in this block of chapters, Scat?
Are I hit me with them?
Like,
I did notice some flirting resuming, but I don't know that I got a lot of that's what she says. What do you got?
so when Shem asks Denna what cut of the pig she'd like, she says, I've
Oh
always had a
yes,
liking for the hinder parts myself,
behind her
Denna
parts.
said,
Yes.
then flushed in embarrassment and looked down. Shem showed his true gentlemanly nature by refraining from any crude comments. That's one. There's at
And
least one
she's
more coming up.
that's subtly manipulative of her, right?
Mm.
Like she's saying that to like it's not flirting exactly, but it's like mentioning, a little saucy detail that
Being
maybe
a little
gets them
saucy,
excited and
a little
interested, right?
saucy.
Maybe a little more willing to share information because
Mm-hmm.
she's,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
So was she doing that for Shem or was she doing that for Kvothe?
oh, I think she's doing it for Shem for sure.
Yeah.
She's trying to loosen him up.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think.
She's playing that game.
Yeah.
All right.
With the looking down shyly and the whole act. Yeah.
Yep. Final quibble. I thought it was funny that Kvothe was completely blind to the first opening scene when he thinks it's a boar and it's actually a pig.
Yeah.
I don't
It's
know.
very funny.
I feel like it was right there. Dennis saw it was a pig right away. And he still
It
thought it was a
yeah.
boar. Like
Yeah.
it's like, dude,
Yeah, I
that's a pig, man. Like
yeah.
you can't see that? That's a pig.
It speaks to I don't know whether Pat's doing it on purpose, and I don't want to get too deep into it. It's maybe a Debbie thing, but Denna's sharp. She knows things, and maybe Pat's using this as she sees things maybe that other people don't immediately see.
Okay. So it's
But
less
well,
both being blind and just Denna
I'm
seeing
not
it
gonna
well.
I'm not gonna disagree with the way you interpret it because I like my knife thing. It's like it seems stupid. I
Bro.
agree. I
Yeah.
wonder if that's what he was trying to accomplish.
Hmm.
Is like she's calm and she sees things as they are, and Kvothe is not that reliable with his perceptions as he thinks he is sometimes. Which
Yeah.
the reliable narrator thing is something we've talked about quite a few times. He calls himself in that same scene. He calls himself crazy as Elodin on his worst day. Is how he looked. His one shoe off and
Hmm.
his
Hmm.
wild hair, and he's poised like a wrestler with the knife. But Kvothe is willing to just kind of call it like it is and make fun of himself when he's got it wrong. And so it is one of those things sometimes where I chafe at the unreliable narrator narrative because he does seem to kind of see most things truly. That's why he's good at naming. Um, and I think he sees himself pretty truly as well. Um, anyway, I'm sure there are some things he's unreliable with, but I feel like we can usually trust him, though he could be wrong. But I think he's honest about his assessment. Sometimes he intentionally lies. We'll get to some of that later too.
Yeah, we will. We 100% will. It's starting to drive me insane. Um, I'm ready to go to chapter 74 if you
Let's
are.
do it. Yeah, let's
Okay.
do it.
This one's called Waystone, everybody. So Denna and Kvothe arrived at the summit of that northern hill they spied from Barrow Hill, just as the sun was setting. They weren't disappointed. The view was stunning and offering an unobstructed look in every direction, including the rough terrain of the tall bluffs to the north, where they wanted to see. The pair settled in for the night amongst a handful of gray stones on the top of the hill. Three of them were even set up like a henge, right? Like in an arch. As they ate around a campfire, Denna suddenly saw something in the distance, a flicker of blue light. It happened again. This time Kvothe saw it too. It seemed to be getting stronger, closer, before it stopped altogether. Okay, well, on to a new subject. They traded ideas for what Mauthen found on his farm, according to Shem, that could have attracted the Chandrian. What was it that he found? Kvothe posited that Mauthen must have found something underground that the Chandrian couldn't allow to get out into the open, be it an item or some sort of knowledge, or maybe both. Denner runs with the theory from there, suggesting that the reason the Chandrian came to the wedding was maybe to erase all knowledge of that something's existence, leave no stone unturned. I don't know, but to quote, that sounded eerily like a reason for killing an entire troop of Edema Ruh. It's later when Kvothe was awakened by a frightened Denna. Shh, she warns. Listen. Both heard it. the sound of something large lumbering up the hill. They couldn't see it in the darkness, but they could hear large tree branches, not like little pieces of kindling, large branches breaking in its wake, and its huffs and its grunts resonated in Kvothe's chest like thunder. The scared pair fled to three of the greystones, the ones that had been left in that arch formation, and they scrambled their way up the 12 feet to the top. As they peered over the edge down at their small camp, the creature came into view. It was black, at least 6 feet tall, 15 feet long. It moved close to the ground like a lizard. As it tasted the air, it suddenly loosed a burst of flame from its mouth. Blue flame. They'd found a dragon. It's the end of the chapter.
That leaves us a bit on a cliffhanger there.
Oh my goodness.
What's going to happen?
See you next time, Kalasar.
Yeah.
No, we'll tell you what I was in just a second.
Big, scary, fire-breathing creature. Sounds like a dragon, other than the low to the ground bit.
Yeah. Like a lizard, but I don't know. When I think of this guy, I think of How to Train Your Dragon. Because he's black. The dragon's black on that. What's his name? It's some sort of funny name. Oh, what's the name of the dragon in How to Train Your Dragon?
Toothless, isn't it?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Toothless.
I imagine Toothless. Or I
I'm
imagine
surprised I pulled that.
good job, man.
I haven't seen those
Were
movies
your kids into
in an
those
age.
movies? Were the boys into those
Not
back
super
then?
into them. Like I think we watched the first three of them, maybe. We watched
Yeah.
the first two or three.
Mhm.
But they didn't. It wasn't something we watched, on repeat like some other things.
Right.
Like Planes too. Oh my god.
Your kids were into planes too? Fire and rescue?
They were. Yeah.
Bro, we never talked about that.
Yeah. Too into it. And the first one too.
Chewie
The
was
first one probably
way into
more,
fire and rescue.
They were into the first one more, but the second one's bad. So it's what I remember more. It's not bad. It's
not
okay.
bad.
But yeah.
Might.
This is a racing plane. Let's see how we can make more money. That's a different
Mhm.
concept.
Chewie was way into fire and rescue. He watched that movie all the time.
I think that was maybe the first movie we took our boys to the theater to see.
Dang.
I think. Yeah. Fire and rescue.
Planes, fire and rescue. Check it out.
Check it out.
I wouldn't.
I'm not sure
actually.
we're recommending it, but
Yeah.
you can.
The next films get fingered.
Fire and rescue.
We'll be doing planes, fire and rescue.
I feel like I used to quote movies like The Godfather, and now I quote Planes, Fire and Rescue. I hope the Kalasar enjoys my de-evolution.
That's where we're at in life, dude.
Uh-huh.
That's where we're at in life.
Uh,
or a Pokemon. I imagine it being like a Pokemon.
Okay, yeah.
What's the one with the flower on its back?
I don't remember. I'm embarrassed that I don't remember.
It's one of like the main Pokemon,
Bulbasaur,
right?
Bulbasaur.
There it is. It's like a Bulbasaur without the flower on its back.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Bulbasaur's got like a shell, I think. He becomes Squirt. Oh no. I think Squirtle has the shell.
Bulbasaur, he's on all fours and he's got like a bloomy thing. I'm not super into Pokemon, so
yeah, a little bit.
Yeah,
a lot of the concept art. I don't mean to like diss the artists, but I looked them up to see like if there was any cool art of this thing. And a lot of them miss the like it specifically mentions in, I think it's actually the next chapter, but it mentions like the flat head, like the flat almost like no, it doesn't say shovel shape, something like that head, and everything gives it most of the art gives it more of a common lizard type head. And I imagine it being like almost like I don't know, like a hammer,
like a rock got dropped on it from above or something.
Flat. Yeah. I'll find it when we get there.
Yeah.
It's I think it's when it knocks over the tree later. And it talks about it. But anyway. So still though, some good art out there about these things. It's fun.
And a fun little moment There's a great tension building during that scene. I was scared. I didn't know what was going to happen. We had the blue flame, and then obviously marching up the hill.
Yeah,
Uh, Bad
yeah,
things happen when you're at the top of a hill. Just ask, you know, Sam,
yes,
Tarly, you know,
sure.
stuff
That's right.
happens. Stuff happens, man.
Fist of the first men.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, and this is, this is high fantasy. Dragons are a thing. There's magic. There's been magic. There's been demons. There's been all sorts of things. Why not dragons?
Who knows what this thing could
Sounds
be?
sounds great. Let's do it.
Hmm. What did you think, Scad, of the whole theory about the Chandrian being attracted to whatever Mauthen found on his farm, and that being the reason for the slayings?
Right. So there's kind of two ideas. Two ideas. One of them is that they want the artifact, right? That whatever was dug up is important to them and they want to get it or something. That's Kvothe's original idea. And Denna's like, that doesn't make any sense. If they wanted that, they just wait for the wedding to be over and kill two people instead of 40,
Right.
right? Or whatever. And her idea is that they want to, as you said in your summary, get rid of the entire knowledge of the thing. Everyone he talked to
Wipe
about
them
it,
all out.
wipe it out, right? And send an example too, right? If there was anybody out there, that knows that heard about this, they're not going to talk about it because bad juju, right?
Radio.
So I like the second theory. It irks me a little bit. It I think I brought this up on the previous episode. It irks me sometimes that Kvothe has this perfect memory of his time with his troop, in some cases, but he forgets this moment that he's since unlocked about, the parents singing the wrong sorts of songs, and that Denna came to that conclusion before he did.
Hmm.
Because you'd think he would have been like, oh yeah, they want to kill everybody just like they killed my troop. I think both would put that together. And it again, kind of like I said in the last chapter, maybe it says more about Denna than it says about Kvothe that she gets there first. Right? There's something to her, right? Like she's smart and sharp and
Right.
has knowledge about things that and gets to conclusions sometimes pretty quickly. Um, she's got a good thinking head on her shoulders, at the very least.
Yeah, the way that you said that just made me think, is it possible that Kvothe is somehow trying to place Denna on a pedestal in this story that's finally being recorded?
It's an interesting thought.
Like, she taught me how to use a knife.
Yeah.
She recognized it was a pig instead of a boar. That's kind of a small thing. But she came to the conclusion of the Chandrian wanting to wipe everyone out.
Yeah.
He
Maybe.
obviously holds her in a lot of reverence, going back to when they first started talking about her to the chronicler.
He does.
And
Yeah. Yeah, it's possible that he's trying to like kind of build her story up. I don't know what the
mhm.
exact motivation would be.
No, we don't.
Maybe he's doing it because he is in love with her and he just wants to treat her right.
Yeah.
Um, or
Maybe
maybe
she,
she just noticed it first.
maybe it's
We
just
don't
the
know.
truth.
Yeah, maybe it's just the truth. But yeah, more in Devi After Dark about that too. I
Okay.
think. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Um, more than meets the eye, perhaps. Yeah, it's in various ways. Um, good thing these gray stones are here for what's about to happen. Find out. Uh, got them falling asleep. You ever had one of those where you're supposed to stay awake and you just can't?
Every movie I've gone to see in a theater for the past 3 years,
You and I are so different.
4 years.
I never fall asleep during movies. Almost never.
Really? I
No.
didn't mean to. It started happening. It just
Yeah.
started happening.
Huh. Awen's that way. I mean, like, unless it's, I mean, she's got to be tired, but like, unless it's super engaging, Yeah, she'll just nod off
Hmm.
for sure. If it's if it's 9:30 or later, like she's not making it, right? Like so, but I don't have that. I mean, I'll stay up if I'm being told a story, unless I'm really really not interested, I can stay up for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh. Maybe it's because I've become like a big time, well, the whole family has become big time movie snobs. And like when we go to the
Uh,
theater, we got to get the like reclining seats and everything. And I
and
sit
they're
back
easier
in
to
those
fall asleep in.
suckers. I put those seats, my feet are up, my head is back.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Margot Robbie looks great on the screen. But then when it's a Ken scene, uh, good night.
You're out. Uh, yeah. I mean, to be honest, we don't go to the theater that much anymore.
We don't either. Yeah.
Uh, the last thing we went to was couldn't even tell you.
I'm trying to think of the last movie we saw.
Yeah, don't know.
I don't even know, dude.
Sad a little bit.
It is a little sad.
Uh, my AMC stock is down in the dumps. I know. Never see that money again. Uh, mine is driving, I think, which is the worst time. Like I remember one time I was nearly at home on my way back to college in Tucson, and I was like 30 minutes away on like one of the most dangerous highways in America.
Oh man.
And my eyes were just falling, falling just over and over and over again. I made it. Obviously, I'm here to talk about it, but it was it
It
was
was touch
dicey
and
for
go.
for 30 minutes. I'm trying to stay awake, and it's a road such that like until you get to the city, there isn't really a safe place to pull off. The
Mm.
shoulder
So
isn't
you had to
wide,
keep
and
going.
it's. I mean, I could have stopped if I pulled off of the road, but like you know, not the safest thing. It was night, and anyway,
What if you would have pulled over and a Dracus would have gotten you?
that'd have been amazing. That would have been at least a story worth telling, which is more than this is. Can't believe I just told it. Uh,
No, when I used to work graveyards,
yeah.
uh, I remember specifically one specific day where, I leave at 7 in the morning and I drive home.
Uh-huh.
And I was pretty close. It was like a less than 10-minute drive.
Hmm.
And I specifically remember stopping at, there was one stoplight that I went through to get home. I remember stopping at that stoplight. And seriously, the next thing I remember is pulling into the driveway.
Ooh,
That's all I remember.
that's crazy.
Isn't that freaky?
But it wasn't the thing that just happens sometimes where your thoughts take over and you just go through the motions.
I mean,
Like
maybe it was up, but it was very much like I pulled in, I
you
stopped,
have no
and that
memories.
like,
Yeah.
and that like maybe go, oh wow, I'm home. Like,
Yeah, that's pretty terrifying. Yeah.
what happened?
Like you lost time.
Uh-huh.
Like
I
you
should have like
blacked
looked at
out.
the clock and seen what time it was. Like, what if I went to IHOP and got some food and just like,
Like Will Ferrell in Old School. You see Old School? What happened? I blacked out. That was amazing. What happened? I blacked out.
no.
Will Ferrell, he's one of those guys. I feel like he just deserves everything he's gotten. I admit I don't really know the guy like his character, but he's legitimately funny every time I watch him.
For sure.
Just his delivery and timing, even garbage stuff I don't want to see. I watch him. I'm like, that's funny. He got me again. This guy.
He seems like he's always on.
Yeah, yeah,
I feel like I'd be exhausted around him.
yeah. He could be one of those guys. Yeah, for sure. Or he's not like that at all.
What if he's not?
Yeah, who knows? We will never find out. We
No.
will likely never hang out with him.
Nor do I. I don't know that I care to.
Yeah,
No offense, Will.
yeah.
I'm sure if I
Not
met you,
really.
I would be sufficiently starstruck and talk
Yeah.
about your great work in the Lego movie. But, or Talladega Nights,
I mean, he's got a billion. His drama is actually quite good as well. Uh, I want to add one more thing before we move on to the next chapter.
which we really haven't
Uh,
really even talked about this chapter, I don't think.
yeah, we have. We talked about,
Okay, we did talk about the Chandrian and the farm and the
yeah, a little
yeah.
bit about the Dracus,
Okay, yeah. Bulbasaur. Yep.
which we don't know is a Dracus yet. It's a
Whoops.
dragon. Sorry.
Boom, ba-da.
We'll find out in like literally the first sentence of the next summary.
Correct.
Uh, while he's trying to stay awake, Kvothe thinks about the fact that he didn't leave a letter for his friends to like tell them like, "Hey, I'm not dead," or, and it really is inconsiderate. And
You're
Kvothe does a
right.
lot of Kvothe does a lot of things for people, like big gestures, to like
Hmm.
that are really thoughtful.
Yep.
With Ari, for example, right? Like he's doing a huge thing with her.
Yep.
Like she was fine on her own before she met him or whatever, but he's really helping, right?
Hmm.
Like a lot through companionship and through bringing her things and nutrition and all these things that he's doing. But he's kind of bad at like the most basic stuff,
Sure. Just
like
like
saying
being a
thank
friend.
you,
Hmm.
like saying thank you, for instance. Like I feel like he takes his friends for granted a little bit,
They've
even though he
invested a
clearly
lot in
loves
him,
him.
man. We've
Yeah,
talked
like
about that. We've talked about that.
yeah,
They've invested a lot into Quoth
and
and like his
immediately,
well-being. Uh-huh.
like they
Yeah.
immediately helped him. And I'm not saying he doesn't help them too. I'm sure he does, but I don't know. He doesn't
No.
feel very grateful about it sometimes. And sure, like I know his mind was on, getting these answers, but like, dude, people care about you. Like,
Yeah.
if you were gonna leave the Rue caravan to go pick flowers, you'd tell them you were going, even though it was gonna be for a couple hours, right? Like you're gonna be gone for days. You should tell them. He, anyway,
Yep.
I guess good on him for recognizing that he was a dick about it, but recognize it sooner. And it's, not to spoil, but it's not the last time he does that.
The streets of Tarbine really did a number on this kid.
What
Because
do you
to your
mean?
point, back when he
He's
was with the
found.
troop, he
Yeah,
would have told somebody that he was going,
yeah,
you know? And then he got so used to being nothing.
it's true. Yeah, maybe I'm being a little hard on him. He became so independent that nobody cared about his comings or goings. He didn't care about anybody else's comings or goings. Very
But
much self-preservation mode.
yeah,
Yeah.
but this is the first time he thinks about them at all that we know of, I think.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's not great either. It's really not.
Yeah.
I also feel like we'll come back to this. He does have that very one track mind thing. He's got that very squirrel mentality.
Ah,
A little bit of, like we've
yeah.
said, I mean, I'm no doctor or psychiatrist, but
Yeah.
would I throw out a little diagnosis of ADHD or something? Yeah, I think I would.
Yeah.
Where he gets so hyper focused on that one thing that it is it for him.
Yeah. Denna, 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 Denna. Chandrian.
Dracus
Yeah.
in this case.
Almost sounded like the old Batman name. Denna, 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 Dractus.
All right,
Wow.
dude.
Didn't foresee that happening. All right.
Mm.
Interlude. Obedience. You ready?
Yep.
After proclaiming that he had seen a dragon, Kvothe pauses his storytelling to let his audience at the inn object to the notion. There's no such thing as dragons to begin with, but also, Kvothe's audience is perhaps more likely to object than any other audience in this world of Temerans. It is revealed that the chronicler, Devin Lockhees, wrote The Mating Habits of the Common Dracus, one of the books Kvothe had mentioned reading in an earlier chapter of this book. Chronicle shrugs and indicates that it is not his place to comment on the story, and that he agreed not to interrupt or to change anything in the story. Chronicler and Bast agree to continue on with the story however Kvothe chooses to tell it, to which Kvothe responds, "There are few things as nauseating as pure obedience. both of you would do well to remember that. Very well, it was a dragon. And that's the end of this little interlude. One of the shortest interludes we get, maybe the shortest in this book. I didn't go check. And it's an interesting one, Matt. Maybe I'll just ask you directly, like, why pause the story for this?
You know what I was thinking of?
Now,
she doesn't get eaten by the eel at this time.
Oh, Princess Bride?
Princess Bride, yeah.
I just want you to know that so you're not afraid or something. Is that what it is? Oh, man.
Now, she doesn't get eaten by the eel at this time. I wanted to tell you because you were
Good
starting to
old
look
Columbo.
Yeah.
Good old Columbo and Kevin Arnold.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin a mold.
Yeah, that's a good question. Reference. Why would you pause the story here? Is it just for even more dramatic effect by Rothfuss, making you wait 2 more pages until you find out what happens to him?
Yeah.
Is it? That's not something I thought about.
I should have looked a little closer. This is the first time we are told that Devin Lockhees, the chronicler, wrote this book, correct?
No.
Do you remember? Oh, he mentions that before?
He does mention it. I went and because I was like, had they said something about this before? And
yeah.
Clear back in one of the other interludes, he mentioned he's at the bar wiping it down, and he's saying, "I read your book years ago, The Mating Habits of the Common Dracus." Quite the eye opener for a young man with his head full of stories.
Okay, so we knew it already, so that's not a good reason to stop the story.
Mm-hmm. Chronicler smiled to him in that chapter and said, "I was a little disappointed. I went looking for a legend and found a lizard, a fascinating lizard, but a lizard just the same."
Nonetheless. Oh, yeah, it's just the same. Yep. Yeah. Okay, I remember that now. So that's not a reason, right? To just point out that he wrote this book. And so you start to have to ask a question. Okay, well, what's the point, right? And you have this the chapter's called obedience. You have this comment about there are a few things as nauseating as pure obedience, almost as if he, even though they promised they wouldn't interrupt to correct him, he wishes in this moment they would.
Correct.
To keep him honest or something.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And there's also this phrase,
white mutiny.
White mutiny.
Yeah. Thoughts?
Have you ever heard the term white mutiny? Well,
nope.
I had no idea what it meant at first, so I looked it up. Did you look it up?
I did too.
Okay, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
Well, what I found in my brief looking up was just an actual instance in our world's history called the White Mutiny.
Yeah, there was. And I clicked on a few other links beyond the wiki entry that I saw and a couple other things that had that reference to the specific instance. It's the general idea is like a slowdown strike. You heard of slowdown strike? Where it's like, yes, I'm doing my job. You can't fire me. I'm still putting the widgets here, but I'm doing it slower than I have to. And you're losing money. And until you address my problems, I'm still doing it, but I'm not going to do it real fast. I remember my buddy Adam had a temporary job once doing construction out of college when he was looking for work. And he was just a temp, right? He was getting paid whatever the low temp rate was. And he was with a bunch of career construction guys. They were on the job and they were getting paid to do a certain amount. The more work they did, apparently, for this job, the more they got paid.
Sure.
Or the faster they finished the job and could move on to another job and get paid more.
Yeah, times
so money. They wanted him to go fast, right? And he's got this big sign and he's carrying it on his back or whatever and trying to walk to this truck. And they're like, "Come on, man, move it, run." And at first he's like, peer pressure. He's like, "Okay, I'll run." And then he's like, "Screw this, man.
I'm getting paid no matter what.
I'm getting paid $8 an hour. I'm not running." And he, explained it to them and they kind of scowl at him. They didn't like him. He wasn't on that job for a long time anyway. So he didn't have to worry about, workplace environment, relationships and stuff. But similar idea of a slowdown strike. You follow orders, but no more. You do exactly what was asked, but no more. In like a military term, you obey your order, but you don't operate to the best of your ability to complete the task. You might not share information unless you're directly asked the specific question that would make you reveal that information. You're
Correct,
not
yeah.
really doing the human version of your job that people would expect. You're doing exactly what you were ordered to do. You said take position at the gate. You didn't tell me to stop anyone from coming into the gate. You just said take a position at the gate. Everyone should know you're implied, as a guard to stop people from coming in. Leaving the room, yes. But so applying that to this story, right? What we have is Devon and I think Bast kind of agreeing, like, okay, we're doing the bare minimum. We're listening to the story like we agreed, and we're not going to call you out if you lie to us about a dragon or other things. And it almost what I came to, I didn't really put all this together all by myself. There's an awesome thread on Reddit by a guy named Smurfalicious who does a lot of posting on the Reddit. But he kind of lays it out. He's basically warning Kvothe, or he's basically warning his audience that he's going to lie to them about this. And we can go more into that later as to
what
Smurfalicious' theory is. But he's getting tacit approval that they're not going to call him on this.
Right.
He can lie here and I guess maybe elsewhere, and we don't know where. He Kvothe told us from the beginning, he's like, some things I'm going to lie about in this story. And here he's getting like a reconfirmation, right?
Yeah, we're going to record the story exactly as you tell it. You have free reign.
But also he's reticent about that. He's reticent about that. He says, pure obedience sucks. You guys should be calling me out. So he's like, he's got mixed feelings about it.
Yeah, almost like he doesn't trust himself.
How many lies will I tell if I have tacit approval to do it?
Exactly.
Right?
Yep. That's what's starting to drive me nuts with the story, Scad, like I said, is just never knowing like if he's telling a lie or if he's embellishing this. Did he say this to make himself look better? Did he really come up with that idea? Like, I'm starting to question everything I read.
How do you think that this is a hard question to answer? It's not in my notes. I'm just thinking about it because of the way you put that. How do you think that differs from any other story where somebody's telling it, or even if it's like a first person narrative, like a first person POV version of a story,
right?
Like what's different about the way either Patrick is approaching this or Kvothe is? I don't know which is causing the problem, but I don't have an answer for you. By the way, this is just an honest question.
Yeah, dude.
What about the way this is happening makes it irksome instead of just, this is the way all stories are?
Do you think it's because he gives little clues like this? Like it's Rothfuss basically telling us, like, don't trust this guy. Don't trust this guy.
Yeah, like we're dumb enough not to notice that the POVs are flawed in other stories because the author isn't calling it out and reminding us.
Right. Or
and
like sometimes
is Rothfuss a bad author for leaving hints in there that make us think that he's an unreliable narrator? Or is he a great author for not this time he's hitting us over the head with a hammer with it, right? But a lot of the time, like earlier in this episode, when I was like, it seems unreliable, sometimes he's doing it and we just kind of barely notice. And is that good? Because that's his intent.
I think
is it?
I think with how carefully he's writing these books, I have to think it's intentional. He's a great author and he's a great manipulator.
Yeah.
In terms of manipulating the reader.
I think what you just told me, though, is that he's trying to annoy us. Because you just said you're getting annoyed. And it is a little bit to second guess everything you read. Now with tacit approval to lie. And only his own conscience to stop him. Which he doesn't really even say is a good conscience. Like he says he's not a great guy.
But I don't think he would do that for nothing. Yeah, I think what we'll find if this ever gets finished is that he's a game player. That's what I
Yeah.
would think. He's embedded clues throughout these stories, and we've called things that I've said it myself. He spends all his time talking about a fort, and he never talks about it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so unhappy. He's, I think we'll find, especially as he's finished, and we've already been able to identify some of them. Careful readers like you and Smurfalicious have probably identified tons more than I could ever dream of identifying. But he's put them there so that someday we're annoyed now, but we'll go back and go, oh,
Mm.
oh, oh, oh.
Yeah.
I don't think he would do it purely with the intention of just annoying us or manipulating us.
Yeah. Yeah. To the point of like Kvothe's intent rather than Pat's intent. Kvothe's intent to lie about some of these things. And this, I think this is in the thread, this one malicious thread that I'm referring to.
Mm.
Um, and if you just look up White Mutiny Kingkiller, you can find it. But it goes back to the Scarpy quote when Kvothe asks him, "Is that that Scarpy, the guy that told him the story of Lana
Yeah.
and the fall of the Seven Cities, in the Great War? Nope, Creation War." Um, he he asked him if it's true, and he said yes, but, and I'm not quoting directly, yes, but too many truths can overcomplicate the story or confuse the story, right?
Mm.
And so,
Mm.
there are, I think Kvothe very much believes that in the crafting of a story, a lie can help get the message across. And so, is Kvothe's goal really, I want to tell my story and have it be an accurate account? Or is Kvothe's goal that the person hearing the story ends up at a conclusion about various things we don't know yet?
It's a really good distinction that you've just made. And the further
And all
wrinkle,
the truths might complicate that. That kind
totally.
of point. Yeah. Sorry.
I think the further wrinkle in that is Kvothe's constant battle with himself and his own
Hmm.
pride of being
Yeah.
like,
He's so
knowing in his
good.
mind, this is what really happened.
Yeah.
Oh, and I should tell that, but I also, this is the story that's going to
Yeah.
be recorded about me forever.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I just say
Yeah.
this.
So we have really two types of lies. Pride driven white, I'll call them white lies because maybe they don't matter that much except to us as readers. But like, you know, yes, I jumped it in a single bound instead of climbing down and climbing up the other side or something. Right? Like, he embellished it. It's
Mhm.
annoying, but it
There
doesn't
was
matter.
fire everywhere, and
Right.
I ran through it
Versus
all.
lies that are driving a narrative.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
And
that
we'll,
changed the story.
yeah. Anyway, we'll come back. I think we'll come back to this in Devi After Dark for sure.
Mm.
Uh, and we can keep talking about it if you want, if you got more to say.
Nope,
It's
I don't think I do.
it's less than a page and we talked about it for quite a while.
Yeah.
All right, shall we move on?
Yeah. Let's pause for a second, Scad,
Sure.
because we want to talk about our friends for a minute, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we've been doing these little podcast spotlights, podcasts that friends of ours through the fandom have started. Sometimes they're about A Song of Ice and Fire, sometimes they are not.
Hmm.
We've done one per episode for the last several episodes. What do we got this week?
This week we got Ragman's Harbor. Tell us
Mhm.
about Ragman's Harbor, Scad.
Ragman's Harbor is the harbor uh, in Essos, where Arya
Bravos
in
specifically?
Bravos in Essos.
Mhm.
Yep, where Arya is running around selling fish products and
Cockles and
cockles and shrimpies and various other marine life.
Mhm.
But it is also a podcast featuring two friends of ours, Virginie, right,
Mhm.
and Lo, and they cover real life historical and cultural parallels to Song of Ice and Fire from a non-Anglo perspective.
Non-Anglo, Scad. That's
And that
interesting.
and that's definitely not something I wrote. That's something we obtained and copied.
That's lifted straight from their Twitter profile.
Yeah.
We wanted to get it right, Lo and Genie.
Yeah, I think it's, I certainly don't have a good sense for all of the voices out there covering these works. I know there are people in different languages and stuff covering them, but I feel like a lot of the big focus we get is from very Anglo voices, right? And it's their perspective is fresh and um, something we need more of in all areas of life, right? To get
Yeah.
these perspectives, that aren't always lifted up. So I was really happy to see that they were embarking on this. They're only a few episodes in, I believe. When are they coming
Yeah.
out?
We've got 3 episodes out from them right now. Um, what I love about this too is I love seeing our friends come together through the fandom.
Yeah,
Like you and I knew each other before this fandom
we did.
and we started podcasting. Lo and Genie met each other through the fandom and just started talking and they started a podcast together.
It's so cool.
And it's a
Yeah,
great podcast together.
yeah.
Uh, I was checking out a little bit of it today. They were talking about how, a lot of naming conventions in our world come from religious figures, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lots of Peters and Johns and Pauls and in
Yep.
lots of different languages and cultures throughout the world.
Mm-hmm.
And not just, I was mentioning Christianity and Abrahamic religions. There's many others. And they were talking about how they're trying to find some parallels for that in A Song of Ice and Fire.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that you've got the faith of the seven, but they
Yeah.
don't really have like specific names or like saints.
Oh, the crone, the father, the mother.
Yeah, the stranger, but not like Peter, James, John, Paul,
Yeah.
you know? And they don't have
Yeah.
like saints, people that were not the gods or the
Yeah.
seven that, but are still kind of placed on high, sanctified.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they drew that kind of parallel and they were trying to find something there. And they came to the conclusion that there's actually not a lot, uh,
Yeah.
and how interesting that is. So,
And yet also interesting that names like John and
mhm,
Peter that wouldn't have, I mean, they may have, but they likely would not have survived without the religious influence in our world. They've survived without that religious influence in this world that George has created. That's interesting too.
100%. Yeah. John Connington, Peter
Yeah,
Baelish. Like,
yeah. Where'd you get
we,
Peter from?
where'd you get
I
Peter
don't know.
from? He was the
It was something. It's a
Pope
name.
of the
It means
seven.
means something.
He was
Yeah,
some septon back then.
it means
Um,
rock.
So just approaching A Song of Ice and Fire from a super interesting perspective, right? You
Yep.
and I off mic, we're talking today about like we were like, what would we talk about with A Song of Ice and Fire right now?
We're burned out, everybody. Burned out on Song of Ice and Fire. We need more content. Come on,
And
George.
they are digging deep and finding some of this really interesting content to talk about. So check out
Cool.
Ragman's Harbor. Lo and Genie, like we said, are they're our friends, and we've actually you've heard their voices, not just us talking about them. You've heard their actual voices on Davos Fingers, right, Scad?
That's correct. Yeah, Low. They joined us on episode 118. They covered the Feast for Crows prologue, which is the Old Town chapter,
Mm-hmm.
where we get to follow. Well, the best part about that chapter is Alaris, right? The Sphinx.
No question.
Um, but yeah, we get to see Old Town for the first time. It's probably my favorite city in the Seven Kingdoms. But Low brought some really great gender perspectives to that episode. That was a lot of fun. And then Virginie joined us for the Brienne chapter where they go out into the forest of the Cracklaw Point, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
Nimble Dick Crab, baby.
Nimble Dick Crab, exactly. And that's a great chapter. I remember recovering that with her and just thinking like the way this journey, because it's a journey chapter, right? They're traveling, through this forest and all these different terrains and mists and bogs and it's just the sounds of the rain. It's just so wonderfully written. And we had a great time talking with Virginia about that chapter too. That's
Now I
chapter
kind of
one.
want to
That's
go read
episode.
Aswath.
I know, episode 110. It's
Episode 110. Yep.
it's a weird thing, Aswaf, because I know I just said we're burned out, but I feel like if I just every once in a while picked up one of the books and read a chapter, I would love it.
But
But the
like no, but
idea,
like a no pressure read, right?
yes, right. But
Not like
if I'm
trying
like, I
to
gotta read the whole thing
content or
again,
analyze.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Just
it'd
to
be
read it.
yeah. But
Yeah,
even doing a reread is pretty daunting because it's so much.
it's
But
a lot.
just if I just
But
picked up a chapter and just read, I feel
no,
like
I
I'd
hear
do it.
you. Just grab a book and
Yeah,
just open it up. And we
yeah,
know the story well enough that we can pick it
yeah,
up anywhere and just
yeah,
bask in
yeah.
George's wonderful storytelling. No pressure. Yeah, that would be
Even when
fun.
we were trying to highlight our friends, we got distracted and on a tangent.
Ragman's
Sorry, Lo and
Harbor.
Virginie.
Check them out. You can find their podcast on Spotify. You can find it on Podbean, probably wherever you get your podcasts. You can find Ragman's Harbor. Uh, I see a lot of them posting on Twitter. That's at Ragman's Pod. They might be on other forms of social media as well. Um,
You heard it here
look for them
first.
there.
Pod has moved to Bravos.
Yep.
Pod can be found in Bravos
Pod Bravos.
at Ragman's Pod.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you guys. Thank you for starting that podcast and bringing new original content to this fandom. We're always in need of it.
Yep. We love you. Okay, the mating habits of the common Dracus.
That's right. It's a dragon, Denna insists. It's a Dracus, Kvothe counters, reassuring her that it's an herbivore. It doesn't eat meat, like a big cow. After giggling through the fact that they are relatively safe, they watch the Dracus snuff around in their fire, and Kvothe educates Denna on the Dracus, which he read about at the university. It eats whole trees with its flat teeth, it uses its fire in a mating display, and that one this size must weigh 5 tons at least. They also rarely reproduce and live to be very old, both guessing that this one, in fact, is probably 200 years old. Oof. The Dracus eats a bunch of now extinguished logs from their fire, then settles down, smashing into the fire, and falls asleep as it puts out the fire. Nice and warm little nest. Taking its hint, Denna wraps herself in the cloak that Kvothe loans to her and falls asleep while he keeps watch. And that's the end of this very brief chapter. Not as brief as the last one, though, but this one I have very few notes on.
Yeah.
Cool. A non-magical mythical creature. Seems harmless.
Comes and walks around.
I guess maybe the main point we should infer now is that, the mystery of the blue fire that they saw is probably solved. Right?
Right.
They had seen the blue fire. They had put the sticks out, right, to point them where the blue fire was, to go investigate the next day, and they don't need to do that maybe because they know what the blue fire is.
It was just the Dracus huffing and
This is
puffing
the
around.
Dracus. Yeah, this
Just piddling around.
this non-magical giant cow.
Uh-huh. In the words of Lex from Jurassic Park, I like cows.
All I could think of was, what happened to the goat? What's going to happen to the goat?
He left us. He left us.
Yeah.
Got some great lines.
Oh, man.
I think that's the part where they wake up in the tree and the brachiosaurs are there eating, and she gets really scared. And
Oh,
he
he
says it's
left
like
us?
he's just like a big cow. No, the cow. See,
Oh, yeah,
she
yeah,
says,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
think
yeah.
of it as like a big cow. And she goes, I
I
like
like cows. Yeah.
cows.
Because she's very nervous to reach out.
Mhm.
He's
Yeah.
all gung ho.
And then the brachiosaur sneezes on her.
Oh, yes.
It's a great moment. That's probably, in terms of movies I've watched the most times, that's probably in the top 3.
Coming in right behind Planes, Fire, and Rescue. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I was big into dinosaurs as a kid, and that caught me just at the right time. I was like 9, 10 years old. And when Jurassic Park came out, and I watched that movie all the time.
I remember that came out. It came out with, I don't remember the name of the new sound system, but It came out like as the movie they were introducing this new sound system with.
Yeah,
Do
with
you
the
remember that?
T-Rex and uh-huh.
I
Was it
can't remember the name of this.
THX? No, that was
Might have
Lucasfilm.
been. Might have been. Well, this Jurassic Park is Lucasfilm, isn't it?
Oh,
No,
is
it's
it?
Spielberg.
Spielberg
Yeah.
and Lucas are buddies though.
Yeah,
They
they are.
always collab.
Who knows? We're not
I don't know.
experts.
I don't know.
I mean, you're a Jurassic Park expert, but regardless, I remember they were introducing a new sound system with it.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
I remember being excited about that part.
Anyways, why do you think, Scad, any thoughts on why they called this chapter what they did, or why Rothfuss called this chapter what it did? I mean, honestly, it's obviously it goes back to the book that Devon
Yeah.
wrote, but the mating habits of the common Dracus. Does
I
that have something to
I
do with maybe Kvothe and Denna and their budding
hmm,
little flirtatious relationship?
I didn't think about it that way. It could.
I didn't either
Um,
until now.
they are, a little flirty in this chapter, giggling at
Mm-hmm.
each other and stuff. And she, snuggles into him and he gets, the butterflies about it. It could be. I just figured it was we ended the last chapter, not the the
The
interim chapter.
interlude. Mm-hmm.
The other
Mm-hmm.
chapter we ended with high fantasy, it's a dragon. And now it's just like, no, let's make it science again. The mating habits of the common Dracus. Make it
Gotcha.
very scientific and straightforward and
Yeah.
not fantasy. But I didn't I didn't really put that much thought into it. What did
Yeah.
you so your is that's your thoughts as the budding romance?
I think maybe it's part of it,
Sure.
but honestly, I didn't put that much thought into it either. But
Yeah.
this is my BYU cup. Go Puka
Nice.
Nakua.
This is my winter is coming mug.
Very nice.
I had some coffee. I'm tired.
Yeah. I've got some water with a little energy stuff that you can squirt into it.
Oh,
Same reason.
Mio.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Flip it, tip
We're
it,
being
sip it.
paid by Mio. I just got paid $20 for saying that. I take these extra little advertisements on the side, and Matt doesn't know, and then we see if he catches me.
He's just been dropping them in there. Well, I had my Carl's Jr. one earlier.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Ah, if it doesn't get all over the place, it doesn't belong in your face.
What?
That was one of their. I got a whole story about a comedy troupe in college. Anyway, that was one of their slogans when I was in college. Doesn't get all over the
Nice.
place. It doesn't belong in your face.
It doesn't belong in your face.
They had another one that was slipped my brain at the moment, but it was also very sex adjacent
On the
sounding.
nose. Yeah. Yeah. They know
Mhm.
exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
Well, I remember the commercials. It was like busty gals in bikinis
Sometimes,
eating
yes,
it, and it just
very
like dripping
much.
down their chests and stuff. Yeah.
Hmm.
They knew exactly what they were doing.
Didn't
All
expect to
right.
get sexy content, did you guys?
Dun,
There it
dun,
is.
dun, dun.
Didn't. Do you have anything else for this chapter?
Now let's go to the big one.
It's big. It's a long summary. Sorry, guys. Kvothe is awoken by Denna, who apparently just thought he had slept long enough. But the Dracus is gone, and they appear to be in no danger at all. But she woke him up anyway. In his fatigued and injured state, Kvothe had nodded off in the night without waiting for Denna to take her shift. They climbed down from the top of the stone archway to survey the demolition caused by the Dracus. The hilltop is barely recognizable, with rents scarred all across the top where it rolled and dragged its body, and places burned where it belched its blue fire. A truly dangerous creature, just of its size and weight. Kvothe finds a Dracus scale and tells Denna that they eat stones to help digest their foods, like chickens do, and that the iron in the stones filters into their scales over time. Denna uses his Loden stone to go search for more iron-based Dracus scales in the fire, after Kvothe tells her that they might be quite valuable to an alchemist. Then they talk about what's next. Kvothe looks in the direction of the blue fire they had seen the previous night. Denna, thinking he is attributing the blue fire from the Mauthen farm to the Dracus, indicates that the farm fire couldn't have been the Dracus because there was no destruction to the land like they saw on the hilltop. Kvothe replies that he wasn't thinking that. He was thinking that perhaps her patron had started an actual fire last night out there, and that the Dracus had come to snuff it out as he did to their own fire. They decided to go have a look. The journey's long, though. They're achy and tired from the previous day, and the land is craggy and bluffy. When they finally make it to the smoke, it wasn't what they expected. It turns out to be a little encampment set against the bluffs. The earth was all furrowed and dug up, and trees were knocked down everywhere. As they surveyed the site, though, an overpowering smell hit them. Dead body smell from underneath the ruins of a small timber cabin, and they see an arm sticking out of the wreckage. They theorize about who could have done this. Kvothe wonders that the Chandrian could have killed the man and set the fire, and then the Drakus could come later to put it out and cause all the damage. Denna doesn't think it sounds like the Chandrian. 2 attacks in a row, right in the same place? They usually strike and disappear like ninjas. They also find an illegal crossbow, and Kvothe wonders aloud why someone out here would need a weapon like this. Denna suggests maybe as protection against the Drakus. Kvothe is again unconvinced. Wild animals stay away from people in the wild. Denna wonders if maybe the Drakus is rabid. A terrifying thought. Denna wants to get out of there now with this supposition. Both convinced the Chandrian had nothing to do with this, and more so worried about the maybe rabid giant lizard returning. Kvothe desperately wants there to be a connection with the Chandrian, though. Could they be controlling the Drakus somehow? Denna convinces him. The man had been dead for 2 span, so the timing doesn't line up with the Mauthen farm attack. And the wood and metal here isn't corrupted like it was on the Mauthen farm either. Doesn't seem like the Chandrian. He's convinced, reluctantly, and they're about to leave when the Drakus announces its presence with the crack of a snapping branch. Thinking it rabid and dangerous now, they rush to the bluffs, hoping it won't be able to climb after them. They actually find a crack in the cliff wide enough for them to slide through, but far too narrow for the Drakus to follow them. So there is a strong visual evidence it has been trying to fit through or make the crack bigger, with claw rents on the side of the canyon. They slide down the path and find the ladder to climb just as the Drakus breathes its blue flame down the corridor. The ladder places them on a landing where they can look out below. The Drakus is clawing at the gap entrance of the bluff and blows fire down the inside of where they had been moments before. It's not after them, though. It had been trying to get into that gap well before their arrival. It moves sluggishly away from the bluff eventually and backs towards the trees, knocking one down casually and beginning to eat it. As they watch it eat, and Kvothe spews nonsense theories about how the Drakus might create fire, Denna notices something about the trees below. They look to be planted in rows, not growing naturally like a forest would. And it looks like the Drakus is knocking over all sorts of trees, but he's only eating the maple ones. Well, they look like maple anyway. Kvothe jokes that maybe it has a sweet tooth. They head back down the ladder and continue through the crevasse past the ladder they'd climbed to see if they can go through the back to see it find a safe way out. But it did not provide one. It did lead to an answer to the mystery of this place, though. Fire pits and large metal pans with the remnants of what Denna takes for a sticky candy remain behind. She tries some before Kvothe realizes what is going on. They're making Denna resin here. He springs to action and tells Denna to spit it out immediately, smacking the piece out of her hand and telling her it's poison. He has her rinse her mouth out repeatedly with water, then commands her to eat coals. Eat coals. Does so himself to show that they aren't harmful. She'd been chewing on likely unrefined Denna resin, and Kvothe had no idea how much she had ingested, but getting it out of her mouth quickly was important, and swallowing the coals would help to absorb some of the poison before it got into her system. Kvothe hopes that the charcoal will absorb most of the poison, but the effects are already hitting Denna. She doesn't blanch when he presses firmly on a bruise, and she starts mumbling at Kvothe, her verbal filters seemingly a bit relaxed, commenting on his eyes and how they change colors, how pretty his hair is. But she's afraid also, pressing Kvothe. Am I going to die? He assures her that she will not. They gather anything valuable from the bluff, blankets, crossbow bolts, and after justifying that they will only sell it to an apothecary for savory uses, a melon-sized wad of Denna resin that could make them somewhat rich. Denna is really starting to feel the effects now. She feels wonderful. Kvothe tells her that she should be fine so long as there's no trouble breathing or any heaviness in her chest. Denna wonders about addiction and then comments, no wonder our big scaly friend keeps coming back for more. Of course. The Drax had been eating Denner trees, was addicted, and could smell the resin in this canyon. That's why it was trying to get through. But it was almost out of trees, and when it ran out, it might go into a crazy state until it could get its fix. It would know it found the trees near people. It would seek people out. Kvothe knew that he was going to have to kill it. Denna laughed at the idea and then giggled uncontrollably, blaming it on the poison. Kvothe tried to think about how he could kill it, searching for a crossbow amongst the Denner harvesting tools that he had found. Instead, he found another mass of resin 4 times bigger than the one they had put together before. They could now truly be rich. Before he could finalize his plan for killing it, the Drakus roared. End of chapter. It's a long one.
Yeah, like, come on, Rothfuss. What are you doing here, bud? You give us like 3 or 4 pretty short chapters, and then he slaps a
And
big
this
old fat one
behemoth.
on us. Yeah, like,
Yeah.
I don't know that he was thinking about future podcasters covering his content chapter by chapter.
It was also a pretty dense, just kind of this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened chapter.
Yes, it was.
Um,
You're right.
Not a lot of character stuff or, you know, deep diving into the story and everything. But still, it's a fun chapter to read. I think of all these Drakus chapters as a fun tale. If I were reading Kvothe's story that the Chronicle was writing, I think I would enjoy these
The
chapters. Right?
Drakus part was good. The
Yeah,
Drakus part was decent.
yeah. Drakus part
Yeah.
was interesting. More
Yeah.
more Drakus.
It is kind
Uh,
of crazy how quickly Kvothe decides the Drakus has to die. After we get
yeah.
this talk about how rare they are, there's not very many left in the world. He must be over 200 years old.
Mhm.
Got to kill it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think his logic is he's seen people addicted to Denner
He
resin and
has.
how
He
crazy they
has.
get and what behavior they'll. The reference he gives is there was a girl who stripped down naked in the snow in Tarbine and danced for just a small sample of Denner resin because she was so addicted.
Mm-hmm.
The Drakus version of that, uh, of stripping down naked and dancing in the snow, I think Kvothe equates to, you know, doing everything it possibly can to find these trees. And I don't know whether it's smart enough to make the connection like, oh, people equals Denner resin. Um, but he thinks
Not going
it's
to
gonna
take that
go it's gonna
chance.
go accidentally kill a bunch of people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
But he does arrive there pretty quickly.
Fascinating. Yeah. A lot of books kind of revere the sanctity of life, especially when it's something so uncommon. And Kvothe gets there pretty quick, like you said. And now he's hyper focused on this Drakus. Chandrian
Yeah,
what? Drakus.
yeah, yeah. He's yeah. Is it his? I guess a different way to ask what you're saying is like, is this their responsibility? This is
Yeah.
not what he's here for,
Mm-hmm. This
right?
ain't your
Like,
job.
yeah, which leads to the storytelling heroic epic that Kvothe is telling, I guess, right? Like, is this something he could be lying about,
Uh-huh.
right? To further his legend,
Right. Yeah.
right? Like, why would he have to go do this? See, I mean, he's got a good heart, I guess.
These people mean nothing to him, really. If
I
they
mean,
want
I
to
think,
figure it out,
yeah,
he even talks about it. Like we could go into town, either he or Dennis says, I can't remember who. We could go into town and tell him to rustle up a bunch of men and say, hey, there's a,
yeah,
you know, methed up Drakus out in the woods.
yeah. Dennis says that, yeah, and yeah, she's not wrong. I mean, she's. I'm speaking her thoughts there, I suppose, right? Like, why is this our problem?
Hmm.
You know, I think Kvothe doesn't believe they'd succeed.
Sure.
For
Yeah.
all his faults, he does. I think he does, even though he's bad talking them left and right. I wouldn't trust their doctor. They're backwoodsy, superstitious folk that don't know anything. All this stuff. He's bad mouthing them, but both does, I think, have a good heart in the sense that he doesn't want bad things to happen to innocent people.
Yeah, 100%
And
agree.
you know, at this point, it might change a little bit in the next chapter, but at this point, I don't think he's convinced yet that this is an impossible task,
Hmm.
right? So he thinks they're the ones that know we got to do something about
Yeah. Looking for a hero, I guess that makes me a hero.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's Nas for all you non-hip
All
hop
right.
listeners. Yep.
Of which I am one.
Hmm.
Uh, Denna has a lot of thoughts about the champion. This is again, like you said earlier, maybe Kvothe's putting her out in the lead here for some reason. But she comes to the conclusion, that this is not the Chandrian quicker than he does.
Sure.
The wood
It
isn't
can't
rotting, the
be.
metal
It
isn't
can't be.
rusting. It doesn't make sense,
Yep.
right? Like she
Great
comes to this
points.
conclusion pretty quick.
Great points.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, the wood is a brilliant way because that was so impactful for Kvothe when he
Yep.
realized the wood and the rusting
And the rust. Yep.
metal. Yeah, that was super impactful for him. And she went immediately to that, knocking on the wood, clanging the crossbow on things, probably. It's like, watch,
Yes.
bang, 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 bang,
Yes.
not breaking.
Yes. In her Denner resin state. Actually, I guess she wasn't there yet.
Not quite, yeah.
Uh,
But even
what
Kvothe's
think
like,
what
speaking of the goodness of his heart, he's like, we should bury this body. She's like, nah, we shouldn't.
no. No. Yeah, Denna feels very much like she's got just her own safety on her mind.
At
She just wants
100%
to get out of there.
self-preservation. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is, I think she's very good at. Um,
She's had to be.
she's had to be, yes.
Yeah.
Some little double entendre sexy flirting is back in this chapter. We have always the stiffest when you wake up.
Wake up.
To which she replies, women don't as a rule have that problem.
Yep.
Clever.
That's what she said.
He asks her, have you ever seen one of these? And she replies, how many times have I heard that one?
There you go. Those were the ones I was talking about. It's funny because
These crazy kids.
usually that type of talk is reserved for the pals, right? That's a Will and Sim stuff.
Yeah. 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 It feels you don't know whether Denna's just making fun of how unwilling to approach her with this stuff he is. But like
Right.
she feels like she can just throw it right back at him and he won't do a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And almost like she's mocking him. Or whether she's just really almost earnestly like, what's it gonna take? How
Like,
many times
come
I gotta
on,
put
bro.
sex in this guy's mind for him to make
Mm-hmm.
a move? Could be either.
Or is
I
she
I
just,
know.
or is her personality just coming out as she gets more
Yeah,
comfortable around Kvothe and she's kind of a little naughty, like you and
yeah,
me. Just
like you and me.
that's what she said, right and left.
Like most of us, let's be honest. It's
Yeah, for
it's in the
sure.
back there for most of us. Uh, we you and I think both were convinced in some of the earlier talking and walking chapters, that she's really into him, that she's giving him all sorts of signs. And do you still feel that way in these chapters?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. There's a little bit
Yeah.
more at stake in these chapters, right? And so they can't be as um
Lost in each
he's
other.
lost in each other and him and his thoughts too, right? About how he's feeling and the flow of her shoulder and the hair on her shoulder and all the things he usually knows. He's got other things on his mind that he has to focus on. But it still feels like Rothfuss is taking time to note things, or Kvothe is taking time in the telling the story to note things
Mm-hmm.
that are keeping them kind of connected in that way.
Yeah. And the impression I'm getting from Denna is even if she likes a guy, she's not going to be the one that throws herself at him, right?
Yeah, it's that, and also, I think she's somewhat legitimately scared of this changing because this is the safest
She's
relationship she's
felt.
ever had,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
With a man. I saw Six this past weekend, which is
Oh yeah. What night
you
did you
know
see it?
Sunday night.
Oh, okay.
Um,
My daughter Leia saw it on it was Saturday. Yeah.
yeah, fantastic. Those in the Ice and Fire Con community know that some brilliant minds, Hannah and Dominic and several others, created a musical called Queens based on the Six musical with it's fantastic. It's amazing. So that was in my mind all the time while watching it. I of course know the soundtrack to Six because I I love musicals anyway. But a great show. One of the things that really stands out in that show, um, it's a show about the wives of Henry VIII, right? He had 6 wives, 2 of them decapitated, 2 of them divorced. One of them just died, and one of them lived on past his death. Anyway, one of the things about the soundtrack that you don't get it in the soundtrack that you get to see on stage, is the way they act through some of these songs. And one of them is just about a woman that has been just used by the men in her life that had power over her whole life. Every single time she thought she was making real meaningful connections with these men that valued her as a person and would be friends and would help take care of her and protect her and be good to her, and they were using her at every step of the way for sex, essentially. And the way she takes that journey from being a young girl, the first experience she's talking about, and she talks about each one kind of in order, toward the end where she's just exhausted and beaten down by this component of her life that's really ruined her life.
Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit of Denna in the fact that like she's found that man. Maybe she's barely daring to hope that Kvothe could be a man like that can just care about her and look after her and not be in it for all the stuff that the other guys are in it for. Like this character in Six that is always wanting. And so she might be always dancing on that line of flirting with him and making it more, but also really not wanting to take the chance of what would change and how it would change.
100%.
Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I got a song, old song I wrote a long time ago. You've heard it.
Yes.
That's about that very thing. I like to tell stories in my songs. I've got a song called The Ballad of Jasper and Allie, and
yes,
it's about that very thing. And
yep.
There's a line in that little song where I say, "But saying things will change things, and things are so good right now."
Yeah.
Hmm.
We fear change. It's Wayne's World the third time.
Fourth, maybe. I don't know. So odd.
Jasper and Allie.
So
Remember
odd.
that one.
That was the first one of like the new tunes that I'd written.
Is that the one where you talk a lot about the street in Provo?
Freedom Boulevard.
Yeah.
Freedom's dark, but it's quiet.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Denna Kvothe stuff in there, actually, now that I think about it. It was before I ever read these books. Yeah.
Well, yeah. There you go. It's a very personal song for you, I know, but repurpose it. You have a King Killer hit on your hands. I know it's very personal to you. I wouldn't really suggest you do
that. Good times.
Go ahead.
Please.
Mine's kind of an ending of the chapter thing.
Okay.
So you can go first if you want.
Mine's towards the end as well. This whole selling the resin idea, exploring the ethics of that, especially considering Kvothe's history and what he's seen with the resin. It's worrisome to me. Have they ever watched Breaking Bad? Have they seen what happens when you get into this kind of business?
You're worried about the ethics of the apothecary they're going to sell it to? I mean, they say very clearly they're not going to sell it to the bad people. They're going to sell it to
it's what they say.
The people that make medicine for doctors.
It's what they say. I'm a little pessimistic about that. Once you get it out there, I mean, and you see the type of money that you can make.
The apothecary's like, great, I can only afford to take half of this. I run this little apothecary shop. I don't have money to buy all of this. I can take a quarter. And then they got like all this left. Like, well, I guess we gotta sell it to the unsavory types now.
And the dealers will give you 3 times
Yeah,
as much and they'll take it
yeah.
off your hands right there. It's an easy transaction out the
I, I
door.
I don't know whether I believe Kvothe. I at least believe Denna. She seems honest when she says she's seen it, and part of that is because I've seen some things in the next book about her, but I won't get into details and spoil it. But I believe her when she says she's seen what this does to girls, and she's not okay with selling
Absolutely.
it.
Hmm.
So I believe her. If Kvothe needed tuition money, do I think he might? I think he might.
Yeah. He says, I saw the evaporating pans in a different light. Now each of them was the equivalent, like you're saying, of a heavy coin in my pocket. Next term's tuition, next clothes, freedom from my debt with Debbie. And,
Yep.
Eve Denizen, obviously, her mind's a little altered right now because of the drug, but she's talking about the stuff that she could buy with it. I get a pony, right?
Yeah. Yep.
We'll get you a proper loot and everything.
Lear. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, liar. We'll get you the Lear this
Liar.
time. Um, what is it that Shem says about money?
Best way to cloud a fool's ear, a rich man's ears. Nope. Hold on, I
Yeah,
got it.
something like that. It's just money.
Uh, Nothing plugs a man's ears like money.
Yeah. And it's like all the right reasons are there for selling this stuff. If we're doing bad things for the right reasons, they're still bad things. You know, I just worry about that.
I, yeah, I mean, I think it's only okay if they really only sell it to alchemists.
Right.
With the Better Business Bureau A+ rating. That say they're really just going to make helpful aspirin out of it.
Right.
If they do anything else with it, it's not okay. The question becomes whether you believe them or not.
Hmm.
And I believe Denna. I'm not sure whether I believe Kvothe. If push came to shove, I don't know what he'd do. I feel like again, I think he has a good heart, but I think he is also very pragmatic sometimes in the way he makes his choices.
Hmm. It feels very Walter Whitey to me. Like,
Yeah,
I just need to make some money. So I'm just
yeah,
going to do this one time. And
right.
famous last words.
But you contrast that with this Dracus is going to hurt people. I've got to kill it, and it's like, well, I don't think he wants people to get hurt. I think he knows what Denerism does,
Sure.
but maybe I want to believe in the kid. I
And
think
it's,
he's a
yeah.
good
And it's
guy, but
what do you want more to get
yeah,
out of debt? Like,
yeah,
right.
yeah,
Walter White didn't want to meth people up either, but
yeah, yep.
money talks, baby. I don't know. I was just thinking about that. But
I
it does
but
come down to what you're saying. Is
it
he
wasn't
gonna?
really about money with Walter White, though, right? I mean, I know you know that series better than I do.
Well,
It was at
that's,
first. It was at first,
yeah,
but
exactly. That
yeah,
becomes a false flag though, doesn't it?
yeah.
And Kvothe is exactly the type of person to fall for that, right?
Mm,
Every time it's like, I'm going to do it for the right reason. I got to set my family up because I'm going to die
yeah,
of cancer. So I need to make sure that they're set when I go. That was
yeah,
Walter White's
yeah.
beginning reason.
Yep.
And then it turned out I'm the one who knocks, right? He couldn't
Yes.
stop and he destroyed everything.
But it became not even about money, right? It became about other things.
Hmm.
Whereas I think with Kvothe, it would just be like, well, I already did it once for money. I can do it again for money.
Right.
I I needed tuition badly. I needed to pay my debt with Debbie, or she was going to use my blood. Like I had to.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
it's like, well, if I don't do it now, I'm just going to have to take another loan out to Debbie to pay tuition. I'll just do it now and pay the tuition. And then it becomes like, I need new shoes. And yeah, that slippery slope becomes like, I'd like
Yep.
to buy a nicer dinner tonight. Let's go sell some dinnerism. Maybe.
And the
I don't know.
whole, yeah, the
I think
right reasons warp
I
and
think a
people get
little
hurt.
higher of him now at this stage of his life than you do. I don't think he'd do it unless all the chips were down. But you're right that that's a slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope, is what I'm saying. But I also understand that it's right there in front of you. And
Yeah.
I know how I would be thinking if I saw all that money right in front of me.
I
So,
think I'd be thinking like you would. There's a perfectly legitimate way to get rid of this that will make us money. Less money, but money.
hmm.
And we can do that. And I would like to do that.
Hmm.
Whether or not he comes up with some reason to do it a different way remains to be seen.
Right.
And actually, what we're going to realize, in a few minutes, is that they're not going to have it anyway.
Not all of it, anyways.
Yeah.
All right. Should we jump to that?
Uh, I do have just the one
Oh,
one
yeah.
one thing at the end
Close us
here.
out. Mm-hmm.
There's more interesting things to do than hunt, but then she's interrupted by
Yeah.
I believe it's by the roar of the
By the
Dracus.
Dracus roaring. Yep.
Um,
What do you think
and
that means?
I don't know.
She
I don't know
wanted
whether
to,
it's just another one of those silly little sexy things. Um,
you can kiss me if you wanna.
yeah, I don't know.
Because you know what, dude? That little fort thing at the top of the ladder, that sounds super cool. Like
Yeah, the
eight
little lookout.
8-year-old me
Uh,
would have like I would have spent all my time up there.
yeah,
This is super cool.
it's true. It's true.
Probably a great makeout spot too.
Uh,
So no, but I did take note of that as well.
I don't know what she's saying, but
No.
feels like it's more interesting things to do than hunt.
Mm-hmm. Like what?
Yeah, yeah. That's all I got.
Mm-hmm. Like what? All right, let's
We
finish this
move to
block of
poison.
chapters out. Yep.
Poisson.
Poisson. As Kvothe and Denna returned to the safety of the lookout, they observed the Dracus playing. As Kvothe describes it, cavorting, bounding around like a drunken dog, knocking over trees like a boy would topple cornstalks in a field. As it did so, Kvothe and Denna were struck by the perceived futility of trying to do any harm to such a massive, powerful creature. How could they ever hope to kill something that treats mature trees as if they were twigs? Denna suggested luring it off a cliff. But would that even prove fatal to such a creature? Besides Kvothe's reasons, it's not very heroic. He couldn't think of a way to use sympathy or other magic to dispatch the creature. But what about poison? Hmm. They could use some of that extra resin they found, by which they don't so explicitly say it, but I'm inferring that they want to just OD the Dracus,
Yeah,
pump him full of it.
essentially.
It's a little unclear, but the rest of Quoth's
Well,
plan is
go ahead. Sorry.
the rest of the plan is pretty lucid. They'll return to the Greystone Hill where they camped the night before, build a fire to lure the Dracus in, and if they can kill it by that evening, they could be back in Trebon by nightfall, where he could potentially have access to medicine just in case Denna did end up eating too much of the resin. I don't gamble, he says, with the lives of the people that I care for. That's the end of the chapter. But you kind of do sometimes.
Sometimes everything's a gamble. Just how steep the odds are. Yeah, I think the plan is, we just heard him say to Denna, as long as, you don't get tightness in your chest, right? Or what's the other thing? Tightness in your chest or something else.
Difficulty breathing, something like that.
Trouble
Yeah.
breathing. Yeah. And she's like, I have trouble breathing anyway. Um,
I have
as long as
asthma.
those, so I think what he's implying is that, yeah, if you take too much of it, that's what does happen.
Yeah.
Right. So he thinks that they'll, they'll make the thing arrest or, yeah, have trouble. Its chest will tighten up and it can't breathe or something.
Uh-huh. Crappy way to go. But
Yeah. Yeah. It's unfortunate. It's bad. It's too bad, but it feels,
greater good.
I'm, well, I mean, he's jumping to some conclusions, right? You're choosing to kill this mythical, magical, rare
Rare
creature
creature.
because you think it's going to go on a murderous rampage.
Mm-hmm.
I
Is that a
guess.
little
I mean,
minority reporty? Like the crime
yeah, a
hasn't
little
been
bit.
committed
I
yet.
haven't done anything yet, says
Mm-hmm.
the Dracus. Uh, yeah, I think most of us are taught to value human life over other animal life. It's a hard thing to argue against, I suppose. We consider ourselves to be better, right? or more valuable than other animals, I guess.
Hmm. There's some that would disagree.
Yeah, yeah, for sure there are, and I wouldn't fight them on it even. I'd be like, yeah, humans suck. We're pretty terrible,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. Um, but I think that's his rationale is like, if there's a chance this is happening, and I think it will, we got to do it. Right?
Yeah. Yep. We got to get ahead of this thing. Yeah. A lot of ethics going on in this
Mm-hmm.
these last couple chapters.
More than I thought there would be. Yeah,
Right.
I kind of was looking at these chapters. I'm like, what are we going to talk about? I like the chapters, but there's not a lot of like
Right.
character meat to them. But you're right. There's some ethics kind of buried
Because
in
there
there.
is that question of like, if they don't do anything and the Dracus does go and kill everybody.
Yeah. Why didn't you say anything? Like yeah, you'd live with that your whole life, probably,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep. We had a chance.
You can
Okay.
ostrich syndrome it, right? And just walk the other direction and hope you never hear about
Mm-hmm.
it. But it's not great.
Mm-hmm.
Uh what do you think of Denna's plan?
Walking off the ledge.
Yeah.
It just feels so bad for that poor Bulbasaur Dracus. It's like, doom, 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 walking along. What?
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't really understand what they meant by like put the fire over the ledge with a rope, but use a pan, but they need a rope to do it. Like,
Yeah, I think that like maybe
okay.
hanging it out over the ledge and maybe the Dracus would be like drawn to the fire to where he wouldn't even notice that there's no ground under him anymore. Maybe they do it at night. And
But
so it's
like,
just so fixated on the fire that it like walks, 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 and
oh,
then
I
all of a
see.
sudden it's out.
It doesn't realize there's no
It's
ground,
over the ledge, yeah,
like a
because it's so
Wile E. Coyote
fixated on the
cartoon.
fire. Totally. And he
Yeah.
suspends there and goes,
So you're
falls.
saying like there's a tree like overhanging the cliff,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and they climb out to a branch out here, and they
Hang
drop
the
the rope with
fire.
the pan,
That's
and
kind of
somehow the
how I
rope doesn't
imagined
burn.
it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
It's kind of funny, man,
Yeah.
because like I was gonna make a comment in the last chapter that Rothfuss was so efficient with his descriptions
Hmm.
of everywhere they were going,
Yeah.
from the valley area to the crevasse to the little opening where the drug making was happening. Like
Uh-huh.
I could picture it beautifully in my
Hmm.
mind. I had no problem picturing the
Yeah.
lookout. I could picture it all. Like he
Yeah.
described it so well.
Yeah.
Then this chapter, it's like, so are they going to make him OD? Like, where are they hanging
Yeah.
this fire thing
Yeah.
from? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
tell
it's
me one more
interesting.
time, Patrick. Can you
You know,
explain? Like, you're going to tell a 5-year-old. Tell me what's going to happen here.
yeah, I felt like Tolkien was like obsessed, like compulsively obsessed with describing the environment and the
Mm,
foliage and the
hmm.
everything around them. I don't get that feeling usually with Patrick. It feels like he
Hmm.
has almost like both. He has like things that he gets focused on. He's like, I'm gonna describe the shit out of this. You're gonna know every single fucking detail. And the
About
other
this
things is
freaking
like,
lodestone. Yeah.
nah, whatever. Yeah, I didn't really get the plan uh in this chapter for the fire, but also maybe he just looked at it and he's like, well, they're not going to do it, so I don't need to describe it that much.
Yeah, maybe they're trying to pass along that these aren't good plans. Like,
Yeah, yeah. You are relying on the Dracus to be pretty stupid to walk off a cliff to chase this fire.
our sweet little toothless.
Yeah.
Usually I
Uh.
don't err on the side of animals. I've
Hmm.
told you before, I'm not a pet
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I just sorry guys, I'm not into them. Cats,
How's that fish
dogs.
doing though? Is it
Fish is
is it
alive.
thriving? It's
It's doing
thriving.
quite
Yeah.
well. It's doing quite well.
Living its best life.
Yeah, we actually cleaned out his little tank last night. So,
All right.
yep, he's doing well. Chewie's doing a good job taking care of him.
We got to give him a little Star Wars name. Is he R2? What is he?
Oh yeah, what would he be? So he's red and blue. What's red and blue in the Star Wars universe?
Red and blue.
Um,
We'll come back
mm,
to
yeah, we'll have to think about that.
it.
Red and blue lightsabers?
It's a good
I don't
test
know.
for the Kalasar. Who's listening to this portion of the episode? Come up with a name for Matt's fish.
For the fish. Maybe we'll call him like Wicket or something like that. That'd be kind of cute,
Wicked.
right? Like the Ewok.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of cute.
It's not bad.
Hmm. All right. But yeah, I feel really bad for this Dracus guy. Like, I don't want him to die. He's
He
just out
didn't do
living
anything
his
wrong.
best life,
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
completely coked up, just
Running around and jumping on things, as Dennis says.
just having a great time. And now two complete
Yeah,
strangers are like, we're
yeah.
gonna off you,
Little did
dude.
he know the Morgan and Freeman voice, right? Little did he know.
He's just living his best life. Yeah, Morgan Freeman. It was not his best life.
This was the last time he would smash his head into an oak tree.
Two cold-blooded killers have come on the scene, just ready to
It sounds
off
more like
him.
an unsolved mysteries voice, not a Morgan Freeman voice, I guess. Yeah.
Oh
Emerging
man,
from the shadows. Yeah.
I just feel awful for this poor guy.
uh
But I also feel awful for when he runs out of his sweet, sweet resin.
I also feel like Kvothe probably could have come up with some magic way to kill it. I appreciate that Rothfuss walks us through a couple of mental exercises that he goes through,
Yeah.
but he
Hmm.
didn't spend very long thinking about it.
No,
And
you're right.
like, I don't know, something like he's got two scales and he like bind them, to the scales on the Drax and like rip them apart or like,
Oh, geez.
I don't know.
That'd be heroic. Just
It'd
like
be well,
tear it.
it'd be pretty malicious and terrible,
Yeah.
but I don't know, poisoning it's maybe I guess more humane.
Hmm.
I don't know. He brings in some science. I love it when Patrick brings in the science. The square cube law essentially is something gets bigger in size by a multiplier like twice as big. Its volume gets bigger by that multiplier cubed, so like 8 times
Whoa.
as big.
Whoa.
Right.
Whoa.
And since F equals ma, as we all know from high school physics, force equals mass times acceleration, and since mass is directly proportionate, right, to the volume, it means that it being so big will result in more force if it falls off the cliff.
Easy.
Yeah, I still
Yeah.
doubt it's getting through those scales. Though.
Right.
Maybe. I don't know.
Just gonna bounce. Just a bouncing Dracus. It
I
was
hope somebody followed along with that science and pokes a hole where I
that would
screwed up.
make one of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I do like it when he's like talking about all the different theories for what the Dracus makes fire and everything, and Denna's just like completely not listening to him.
Yeah. Yeah. I tried to note that in my summary for that chapter. It's
You did.
just like as he's going on about nonsense that she does
She's
not care
like,
about.
uh-huh,
Yeah.
uh-huh.
Yeah, sure.
That's another thing
Thickens
with
his
that.
box
The hyper focus is sometimes you miss out on the social cues. Actually,
of
he
people
caught
not.
him, but he didn't care. Like he
Yeah.
knew that she wasn't interested, and he just kept going anyways.
Yeah. Some people, myself included, we love to hear ourselves talk.
Yep, yep. I've had those moments with people where I'm like, "You really don't care, do you?" And they always are like, "No, no, you can keep talking." We're like, "No, I'm done.
No,
This is
it's okay.
fine."
But again, the back to like the lying thing that we talked about before, and like maybe he's just lying to build himself up. He makes himself look like an idiot sometimes, like this. Like, oh, I was going on and on like a
Correct.
blithering idiot.
Yep,
He
you're
could have
right.
just left that out and been like, Denna
Mhm.
noticed that the trees were planted
Yep.
in rows.
And that's why I
Maybe
wonder if it's like a
like
battle with
yeah,
himself.
yeah.
Like
Yeah, I like
sometimes he's
that.
like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to soldier ahead. And other times he's like,
Yeah, right.
"Mm,
Let me little dose of humility.
yeah,
And it
yeah,
does, like back to the, Bast's role and the theme of, that we've kind of been wrestling with for some of this time of, Kvothe's identity as older Kvothe, right, in the inn, as Coat, and remembering who he is, and Bast seeming like he's kind of on this journey to try to get him to remember who he is. Like maybe, like you said, there very much is a war inside of him. Is like, I'm a badass. I suck.
I
And
suck.
like it just kind of maybe like we don't know really the state of his brain and how it got to this fractured. Maybe he's got the two Alars in there, and they're like one shuts down and the other one takes over, right? And he's almost like split personality
Oh,
kind of.
maybe it is more like that. Yeah.
But
Like
like
almost schizophrenic.
maybe
Man,
that they take over in different parts of the story, and he's you know
I hadn't thought about
self
that. Because I'm like, what you're
defeating
describing
and
just there is like, is that's me. Like, has
yeah,
sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm awesome, man. And then I totally suck. And
Absolutely.
it
It,
can fluctuate by the hour sometimes.
it's probably a lot of us. I feel like I am entirely too arrogant for what I am, right? And who I am. Like I'm entirely
Whatever.
too arrogant.
Whatever.
But also, but but also I'm really hard on myself sometimes.
Hmm.
And so, I think that's probably most of us. Uh but I think the fact that he's consciously doing it, or is he, while telling a story is interesting,
Hmm.
right?
100%. Yep.
Anyway,
Anyway,
got any more for poison?
bro, I'm done.
Nothing but a good time. No?
That's it.
When he pings her ear, I laugh every time at that.
Oh, to see if it'll hurt her.
He pings her ear, she's like, "Ow!"
Ow.
Oh,
Wait,
oh,
that didn't hurt at all.
no.
Yep.
All right, yeah, I'm good. We want to move on. Devi After Dark time
Let's go to Debbie After Dark, man.
because it is well after dark. We got a late one tonight.
Dude, it is so after dark. We spent way too much time talking about Song of Madness before we
That's
hit
true.
record on this.
That's true, but it was worthwhile.
And I regret nothing.
Nothing.
Yep. You guys are gonna hate A Song of Madness so much. I can't wait. All right, guys. We are now moving to the spoiler laden portion of the podcast where we will talk about anything and everything from Name of the Wind, from book two, A Wise Man's Fear, all of that. If you do not want to be spoiled, if you do not want to hear spoilery chit chat and speculation or whatever theories, turn it off now. Go away. Just like Denna wanted to run away from the Dracus, run away now. We are the Dracus now. Run away from us. We'll catch you next episode. Love you. Devi After Dark.
A rabid Dracus.
Yeah. Coked
We
up
are the
Dracus.
rabid Dracus. I can't wait to the next episode where they talk about how they come up with the equation for how much to give it. You're gonna love it.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
I do want to talk about the Barrow Hill Fort because it moves into the Greystones a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, I would love to hear enlighten me, man, because I was just like, you spent two, and now you're just moving on from it. You spent all these pages talking about what it is and barrows and everything, and now we're just going on to something else. Like,
Yeah, I didn't research this really at all. I just kind of thought about the story of the seven cities and the fact that none of those cities are standing except maybe one
mm-hmm.
now, um, and and the fact that if they aren't, you know, however long ago it was, 1,000 years, I think they say creation was 1,000 years ago, that it's those civilizations went under, right? And there probably are you know relics or evidence of those cities existing.
Yeah.
I'm a little surprised there aren't, what it looks like is essentially a forest or this whole bluff area has kind of grown around it. Not certainly the bluffs didn't grow, they're mountains, but um, this area maybe used to be one of those seven cities populated. Like this was a fort or an encampment near the city, right? As an outreach to watch for danger or something like that. But it's a sign of civilization of where one of these big cities might have been.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't necessarily have said that other than the fact that this fort, um, it also is near this hill with the Greystones on it. And what we hear about Greystones, Waystones, as they're called, um, is that they're usually on roads, right? Like, or at least that's what we hear from Kvothe and from his
True.
perspective. They're
True.
on roads and they help mark paths and
Mm-hmm.
old roads and safe roads and things like that, and they're a sign for travelers of safety and security, at least from the perspective. These Greystones, these Waystones, are in the middle of GD nowhere. right? I
Big
mean,
tall
they're
hill.
big, tall hill, nothing else around,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's this fort hill is, you know, a few miles away. Um, Maybe there was a civilization or a road toward a civilization in this area. You don't usually build roads to go like over the highest mountain in the area, right? Like you
Right,
go
yeah.
like through and around them kind of. So it's still a little weird. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about gravestones coming up, but it just makes me there are two pieces of evidence of a much bigger civilization being in this area. That's all it really means to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that maybe one of the cities was here.
I think that's yeah. And then the gray stones or the waystones were meant to maybe not be a marker along the path, but maybe guide or point towards something. Like I
Hmm.
thought of how Kvothe set up the two sticks to kind of
Yeah.
mark where they were supposed to see and look.
Hmm.
What if that hinge, that waystone hinge,
Hmm.
was meant to guide the eye somewhere or
Hmm.
point in a certain direction, right?
Hold
If
the
you look through
staff
it
at this angle at a certain time of day, and it will
and the
point to
sun
the.
will come
Yeah.
through and yep, yep.
You got some Indiana Jones going today. We got a
Oh
lot of
my,
references today.
oh, belongs in a museum.
Remember we used to like call out our references on like a web page and stuff. Be like,
Oh yeah, totally.
we used to have energy.
Lost energy for it's complete just lack of energy at this point.
Before our kids just drained us of our life force. Uh,
Oh, dude, I got full-fledged teenagers now, and it is. Luke just got his first part-time, like official tax-paying job. Like,
outside of the snow cones.
yeah, and lawn
Wow.
mowing. Like,
And lawn mowing. That's right. I
yeah,
forgot about that one.
he
But
does after-school sweeping at his junior high. Like, it's an
wow.
official job. Yeah,
Wow.
homeboy
That's crazy.
wanted to work, and he's got it, dude. Scad,
Yeah.
they're going to high school next year.
Jeez.
High school.
That's nuts. Yeah. Mary's going to junior high next year. And
It's a thing, man.
he's gonna be like Luke. You're Luke.
Yeah,
He's gonna be yeah, I mean he wants to work as soon as possible.
it's very practical in that.
Can I get a
Yeah.
job at the come and go? No, you can't get a job at the come and go.
Worst name for an establishment ever, by the way. But
They're
also,
renaming them all. Did you
they
know that?
are?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Maverick bought them all out. They even bought the ones out like in the Midwest where it started. They're gonna over
Wow.
the next couple of years they're gonna change them all.
Are they just gonna be Mavericks?
I think so.
Hmm.
I'm not like on the board or anything, but I think so.
Yeah, how'd the
Uh,
last meeting go with the CEO?
all I can tell you is I vote to continue the sausage egg burritos, breakfast burritos. We've
Mm.
got to always keep those around. That's my only spot on the board is to make sure that happens.
What about the cheese infused hot dogs?
I'm not gonna lie. I eat those.
I can do one. They're pretty dang good.
Our good friend Katrina. Oh man, we don't know Katrina. Wow, I hope she's doing okay. She posted on Facebook or on Twitter one time that the thing that kills her will absolutely be gas station food. Something I'm like relatable content
Word,
because I
word.
eat at Maverick regularly.
Oh, I miss her on Twitter. I wish she was
Yeah,
back on.
she was for a time under a different name.
Hmm.
Anyway, moving
Anyway,
on. Moving on.
you've
Banter
got
aside.
you've got some interesting Denna thoughts, man, that I think might be the main
Yeah,
event of this Debbie After Dark.
yeah. Do you want to finish out on Greystones first?
Oh, yeah, you bet.
Uh, I mean, you said I think your note was what the hell with the Greystones. Do you have thoughts that you want to lend,
Nope.
or do you just want my opinion? Uh, I there's evidence in future books
That was
that
actually your note, dude.
what the hell with the Greystones?
Yeah, it
No,
wasn't mine.
you got a note like that.
Well, yeah, you sub-bulleted my bullet, which was the Greystone Arch. Anything to it?
Oh, okay.
I was like
Sorry.
asking you, literally.
I attributed a swear word to you, and I shouldn't have done that. I should have known you would have never done that. Uh, Okay. So there's evidence in the next book that they are potentially pathways between the Fey realm and
Mm-hmm.
and the worldly Cameron realm. Uh, I may have mentioned that on a previous episode at some point.
Maybe.
I believe he comes back through from the Fey realm with when he visits Florian, who's a goddess of beauty and sex. I believe he comes through a Greystone to get back to the real world. But how that all works and when they're open and all that stuff is a point of a lot of conjecture. And there's tons of ideas floating around out there about how the waystones work and how you can get between Fey realm and the natural realm and what are the waystones made of and
Mm-hmm.
are they pieces of the moon? People think. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. But there's one theory I ran across on Reddit that I really liked, or one explanation at least. It was by a guy named Calvin and Hobbes 144. And he says, I like this theory. I've always visualized the Fey realm like a trampoline overlaying the four corners of the realm of Tamarant, and tethered there with the waystones, like springs connecting the fabric of the trampoline to the frame. Every time the moon waxes and wanes, it's like someone jumping, stretching the Fey away from the mortal realm, so they're not close, making the stone paths impassable. But then, of course, when the moon waxes, or the opposite, right, comes back together, the realms are close and you can travel between them, which I think is an interesting visual way to think about it. When as the moon moves, that trampoline goes up and down, and the realms become closer or further away from each other, more accessible to each other. There's also all sorts of stuff about how time acts differently between them, but it's not really that important for the Greystone conversation. So the
Whoa.
Greystones being kind of like that link with a trampoline, if you want to think about it that way.
Right.
Kind of similar to the idea of like, remember in Asloff, they talk about like the anchors of the world, or the
Yeah.
hinges of the world, I
Hinges of
think
the
they call
world.
them,
Yep.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
these really old things
Yeah, the high
that kind
tower
of like
maybe.
the
Uh-huh.
high tower maybe, and there's the five forts, and there's
Mm-hmm.
all
The
these different
wall.
things,
Mm-hmm.
right? The wall. There's all these kind of ancient objects that are kind of like tethers or something, right? That kind of keep the world grounded. Um, anyway, kind of something like that. Denna. You want to talk about Denna?
Let's go there, dude.
So I don't have anything concrete, just the theme, I think, but I'm becoming more and more convinced that Denna is in league with, and part of this is because I did just finish rereading A Wise Man's Fear for the third time, and so getting
Mm-hmm.
some more information from that later book, that I didn't have as clear memories on earlier when we were doing this podcast. I read like 800 pages of that book in the last month and a half. So um, I'm getting more and more convinced that Denna is working with the Chandrian or a Chandrian herself.
Mm.
There's one, a woman pale as snow, silent come and silent go. Um, there's also there's one that they mention in A Wise Man's Fear, if I can find it. Um,
That's wild, man.
yes, there's one in A Wise Man's Fear that's called Ferul. Sounds a lot like Boolean. Chill
Mm-hmm.
and dark of eye, and both is constantly commenting about Denna's dark eyes. Um, there are theories that Denna maybe is an extension of Feruli, this goddess of sex as well. So maybe Denna is in fact that female Chandrian, and maybe doesn't know it. Maybe she's got some memory
Mm.
things, or um, something going on. She's not always completely aware, but that she's kind of maybe feeding information to Kvothe about the Chandrian to some end. There's also, I don't know how far to go with this, but there's there are people in this fandom for sure that aren't convinced that the Amur were a force for good at all, and that maybe actually the Chandrian have been slighted. That Haliax maybe isn't the bad guy.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I don't know how, I don't know that I believe that necessarily, but in the next book, Wise Man's Fear, Denna spends months seeking out stories about the creation war and the story of Lanray, the story that Kvothe hears from Scarpy in the inn that kind of gets his brain going again, right? But she comes up in her research with, directed by her patron, who we also think maybe is a Chandrian, Mr. Ash, who could be Cinder.
Mm-hmm.
She finds the details that are pretty contradictory to the story that Scarpy told. Scarpy and maybe even Lauren Amur trying to maybe send out a message about the Chandrian that is incorrect, and the Chandrian maybe out there just trying to correct. They're the victims, maybe, and they're just trying to correct that story. And Denna has been pushed to find the truths and create this song, which she does in Wise Man's Fear, that tells this story of Lanray that points it in a different direction. And we don't need to go into all everything that happens there, but
Interesting.
she's plugged into this. It feels like way more than coincidence. She's not a pretty girl who happens to be good at music and happens to know a lot of stuff and happens to trip on answers about the Chandrian. She's got information somehow. She's a true seer that sees things for what they are, like Kvothe does. And I think these chapters are kind of meant to show us some of that.
It's budding.
A lot,
yeah.
Yes, a lot of the focus on Denna to this point has just been she's a girl and she's talented and smart and witty and beautiful.
The object of Kvothe's affection.
Exactly. But these chapters show that she's got, I think they show that she's clever before, but these chapters show that she's got some real intuition.
Beyond clever.
Some real true seeing, kind of like Kvothe does. And, that there's more to her than meets the eye.
Yeah. She's quite formidable for good or bad.
Yeah. And right. And for good or bad is a great question, right? I don't think anyone knows, but there are a lot of, if you go to the Reddit, you can find all sorts of comments about this.
Crazy.
There is to move it a little further on Denna, and go, but also going back to this white mutiny thing. There's a thread out there. It's the one I mentioned before by Smurfalicious about white mutiny that theorizes that the event with the Dracus didn't even happen.
Right.
The entire thing is a lie.
Mm-hmm.
That what really happened is Denna herself got high or forgot this glamour of this person Denna and became her Chandrian self to cause havoc or something, and that what Kvothe had to do in this adventure was stop Denna, and that's why she disappears and they're not together to go back to the university later, and Kvothe has to go back by himself and they're not together afterward. Is that he's actually stopped her and she's run away from something for her life,
right?
But that he stopped her and that there is no Dracus. That he's invented this entire tale
to protect her
to
in the history, in the annals of time.
It goes back to what we talked about in the non-spoiler section. What's his goal, right? Is he trying to get the audience to a point where they believe something about Denna, that she's good instead of evil, or that she's misunderstood,
right?
Like removing her from the official history at all, that no, it wasn't a demon that went and attacked Tribon, it was a Dracus. And this is the most famous story you've ever read about Kvothe, and it says it right here. That other story you heard about a black-haired demon girl is false. This is the true story, right? Like, is he trying to rewrite it and remove her from that path by also putting her in part of the story? So, like, maybe they could see how the details got confused because she's in part of the story, right? But she's not the bad guy. So yeah, it's
wild.
Yeah, it is a little wild.
What do you think?
I don't. It's. I don't want to say far-fetched. I feel like the drop of White Mutiny and going and researching, finding what that really means and where it's placed in the story feels very much like the Dracus story isn't real.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not real, why tell it? What is Patrick's or Kvothe's motivation for spending all this time telling the story of this Dracus if it's not? Maybe it's just as simple as building up his legend. Maybe it is. But it feels like spending all this time to detail this story that has so many repeatable, exciting storytelling elements, like in the coming chapters, a giant iron wheel being dropped on a demon, which is something that happens in the Creation War story, or
Yep.
in the story of Incarnus, rather, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a story people are familiar with that will resonate, right? And if there's not some reason to redirect that story in this way and make this up, why do it? Why spend all the time? Why not just skip this part? Unless he's trying to correct something,
Skip a bit.
change a narrative, unless he's trying to change a narrative that already exists.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it does. I don't know why a Dracus. I don't know that it's Denna. But if we believe the white mutiny thing, that he's telling a lie here about the Dracus, we have to examine why. And I don't know why he'd do it unless he was trying to rewrite a narrative that already exists. Whether that's Denna or not, I don't know. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise,
Now that
why
I
create the lie?
Yeah, and now that I think about it, that's a ballsy lie, considering who you're telling it to. You're
Yeah,
telling it to one of the world's foremost experts on the Dracus.
it's true.
And if you get any detail wrong, he's the one that's going to figure it out, right?
Yeah,
Like, wait a second.
it's
But he
true.
also has said he won't interrupt. So,
But you're right. It's a good point because um, not anyone, but certainly some people reading eventually the story that Chronicle publishes will be like, oh, Devin Lockie's the story of Kvothe, and it's got this whole thing about Dracus. Wait a minute, there's this whole book about Dracus. It's like it like mislead it like adds support to the story
it
that this
actually would.
person
Yep.
wrote both things, right? That
Yep.
he didn't
Hmm.
quibble with any of these details
He
about the
didn't quibble with
Dracus.
it. Yep.
It's right in
Good
there. It's
point.
correct. It's correct,
Hmm.
and he wrote
Hmm.
it, and like they're sources that align,
Yep.
right? Which Kvothe is always looking for sources that align about. Well, it's in the next book, I guess, but um, that's important to him. Um,
Mm. Plus, dude, just like a 6 foot tall, 15-foot long beast, and no
hmm,
one's seen it before. I know it's a big world
yeah,
out there. I know it's
it
a big
is.
world out there.
Yeah, but no, I had that thought too. It's like he says there can't be more than 200 of them. I'm like 200, fucking where?
Yeah.
Like 200, that's a lot.
You could have told
They,
me 12 and I would have been like, whoa.
yeah, yeah. But it is a huge, huge universe. Like if you look at the map, Saken Sus Mapas, I mean, it's I haven't done that in a while. Uh, the map we've covered like you know so far 1/80th of the map. I mean, it's huge. It's giant.
Yeah.
And so yeah, there could be Draxes around there, and all sorts of things about them, how
And I
they've moved to
suppose
different environments, and
one could not be seen, but I don't know, man. It just feels
yeah,
like someone would have seen something
yeah.
at some point. That big, 6 feet tall.
I bet the Chandrian hate him. So like that damn blue fire they make keeps getting the stories told. They think it's us, man. You stop with the blue fire already?
Which is not, yeah.
Yeah, it does seem rare, but we know that they exist because Lockheed's wrote this common mating habits of the common Dracus before any of
Yeah.
this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we know they do exist.
Mm-hmm.
He could be embellishing the details of how big they are and everything, or how many there are, how long they live, or something. But if he did that, it would be in contrast to the information in the other book, and it wouldn't align, and that would cause maybe some discord in the record checking, right?
Yeah, which we do know Quoth has read the book, so he
Yeah.
would potentially know those details
And when Patrick wants, Kvothe has a perfect memory.
when he wants.
When Patrick wants him to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's got an
But not
easy
a,
out. He's got the, what is it they call it, where they lock memories away
yeah,
and they can,
the doors of the door of sleep, the door of
or, yeah,
yeah, grief,
something.
what they're called. Yeah.
So he's got an easy out anytime.
Yes.
Patrick has an easy out anytime he needs Quoth to remember something. It's just like, oh, he used
Yeah.
his learned magic
Hmm.
to pull that back out of whatever
Yeah.
memory bank it was stored in.
It's true.
Yep. Good job, Pat.
Indeed.
Yeah. Smart of you.
Uh, but yeah, so all this stuff with if the Dracus story isn't true, it goes back to that conversation we had earlier. If the Dracus story isn't true, and he's gotten approval to lie to them,
Hmm.
what else is he lying about,
Sure. Absolutely.
and why?
Calls into
Like,
question just
what's
about
the
everything,
reason? And
which
there
is why
probably
it's
aren't
driving me
answers.
bananas.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and there probably aren't answers to this until we get Doors of Stone. Not really. We can guess, but
Yep.
hmm.
I'll be honest with you, man. This wasn't my favorite set of chapters. It
No,
was good. It was
I
fine.
felt I felt like the conversation we had was really good about them.
Better than I thought
Uh,
it would be,
yeah, me too.
which I shouldn't
But
second guess us anymore. Like, just because I'm not going in with mini notes, we always end up having a good conversation.
we can weave magic out of fell apart. I don't know what the analogy is, but we can weave magic.
Yep, we can. Been doing it for almost 10 years.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a little
August,
too
right?
much. Yeah, August. It's a little too much meandering for me.
Up to this cliff, over to that cliff, down to that cliff, over back over the original bluff. That's like traveling meandering or
Yeah,
thought
a little
meandering.
bit with nothing really like, yeah, there's a part of me that's very Princess Bridey. I'm gonna bring in another Princess Bride.
Uh-huh.
And then my ears, I suppose. Get on with it. He's
Yes.
talking about the pain.
No, your
It's,
ears you keep, and I'll tell
and
you
I'll
why.
tell you why. So that every babe that weeps. That's a great moment.
It's a fantastic. The
So good. So
way
good.
he says it, I'll tell you why. It's amazing.
And then
You
when he
keep
tells him to sit down and he
wrong.
does that little sit thing where he like flips up his little skirts and he like it's great. So good.
Oh,
Ah, and you know me, I'm fine with, taking the long way around if it
mhm.
means solid character development.
Yeah.
Maybe we pointed out some stuff here together that I missed just reading it by myself, but it did just seem kind of like they were a
Yeah.
little bit on autopilot, just journeying through
It's
things. Some
well,
silly, yes, I don't know.
it's a little Scooby Doo, right? Like if they're trying to solve a mystery and they're
Mm-hmm.
focused on that mystery, and so it's a departure from some of the character growth and some of the main storylines. I mean, ostensibly they're looking after the Chandrian, which follows that main line of the story, and we do have their relationship and the budding romance. It's part of that main thread of the story. But ostensibly, these chapters are not ostensibly. Actually, these chapters are really about A, something that maybe didn't even really happen, which is
Correct.
off-putting, but B, it's something that doesn't really advance the main plot, and so
Yep.
it's easy to kind of not care as much. Um, other than the fact that it's just kind of building Quoth's heroism.
Just building. Yep.
I still enjoy these chapters,
They were
but
fine.
I'd agree with you. They're not my favorite.
Right. Yep. Yep. It's funny you said advanced. My last sentence is I guess I just didn't feel any real advancement of the story,
Yeah,
nor the arcs of the characters.
yeah, and making it maybe worse is the way I cut these chapters. And decided to cover them for
Mm.
lengthwise or whatever. We didn't actually get the conclusion,
No.
right? So
And
maybe we would have felt a little bit better about it if we got the conclusion of the Dracus story in these chapters, but it
nah.
would have been a lot more.
Yep.
So
You even asked me about that. That was, yeah, that's fine. And I
yeah,
even said, nah, let's just do it this way.
yeah,
This is great.
I think it's fine.
I think it is
Episode's
too.
good.
Hmm.
Chapters are fine.
Yep. It's
We're
great
getting
fun.
real close, though. Getting real close.
Crazy, brother.
Yeah.
Crazy. I'm done if you're done.
I'm done. Let's wrap it up.
Okay. Really glad you guys were here, everybody. And I'm really glad to just remind you as I sign off tonight that you're always stiffest when you wake up.
Mhm. Mhm. Uh, Denna says something very sweet. I think she's under the influence of drugs when she says it. But she says to Kvothe, "It's my job to notice things about you." Khalasar, not to make anyone sad if you don't have it yet, but find somebody who you notice things about. You know, it's a good goal. That's it. Thanks
It
for
is a
listening,
beautiful
everybody.
thing. Yeah, you want to notice things about. All right, Skitty. Good night. Good night, Khalasar.
Why not?
Later.
Good night, Khalasar.